Instead of letting his corrupt executioners take his life, Captain Jin So-eun chose to step backward and plunge straight off a high cliff. As he fell through the cold night air, he raised a single bloody finger toward his killers, refusing to give them the satisfaction of his defeat. To him, his perfect memory had been nothing but a curse that turned his entire existence into a living hell. But instead of meeting his end in the dark abyss, he opened his eyes to find himself back in his youthful training uniform, given a second chance to change everything. We open on a quiet moonlit night on a steep cliffside. A mysterious figure stands behind Captain Jin So-eun, hyping him up for his incredibly sharp memory. This white-haired dude stands over So-eun, thanking him for completing the task. So-eun looks absolutely wrecked, clutching his shoulder like he is barely holding it together. With this crazy imposing posture, the white-haired man declares they have successfully recovered all of the Murim Alliance lost records. So-eun can do nothing but kneel in silence. This is Lord Yong-so, of the Murim Alliance. He coldly tells So-eun that he has their thanks, but his masked face does not show a single hint of actual gratitude. So-eun looks up with a bitter frown. He reminds the Lord that he only memorized and restored those records because he was strictly ordered to do it. But instead of getting a reward, So-eun realizes he is being set up to be silenced. He asks if they are really going to repay all his loyalty with a dog death. The Lord begins to draw his sword with a slow and threatening sound. He claims that if someone with dangerous knowledge like So-eun were to ever betray them, the entire alliance would be ruined. Pointing his blade directly at the defenseless captain, the Lord claims this execution is for the greater good of the martial world. He says both So-eun and his memories need to disappear forever. Instead of begging for his life, So-eun just lets out a dry and raspy laugh. The sheer hypocrisy of using the greater cause as an excuse is almost funny to him. So-eun mockingly repeats the words, Murim Alliance and danger. He stands tall, absolutely refusing to show any fear to the hypocrite holding the sword. Covered in blood, So-eun points out the pathetic state of the alliance which barely survived its encounter with the demonic cult. He asks how they can talk about danger when they are already running for their lives. Yong-so's expression darkens even further under his mask. He firmly insists that the Murim Alliance will eventually rise again and defeat the demonic cult. So-eun scoffs at the grand claim, recalling how the Alliance used countless innocent people as meat shields just to escape. He looks at his executioner with pure disdain, saying he would love to see how they plan to pull that off. He stares past the blade and up at the bright full moon behind the trees. To him, there is absolutely no difference between the corrupt Murim Alliance and the wicked demonic cult. Yong-so is taken aback as So-eun suddenly steps backward, plunging straight off the edge of the high cliff. It seems So-eun regrets ever trusting his sect future to these cowards. As he free falls through the cold night air, So-eun raises a bloody finger toward his killers. He has no intention of letting them have the satisfaction of taking his life. With a final defiant smile on his face, So-eun declares that he will be the one to decide how his own life ends. He completely robs the alliance of their execution. As his body drops down into the dark abyss, So-eun reflects on his miserable existence. Having a perfect memory was nothing but a curse that made his entire life a living hell. His mind flashes back to when the great war between the righteous factions and the demonic cult first broke out. As a warrior from a tiny, insignificant sect, he was immediately drafted alongside his companions. But the demonic cult forces were overwhelmingly powerful, easily tearing through the Alliance's weak defenses. In their desperation, the high-ranking officials decided to flee and leave the rest behind. So-eun and his fellow disciples were used as meat shields to buy time for the cowards to escape. That is exactly when the Alliance approached him with a proposal to memorize their sacred archives. A flashback shows a young and terrified So-eun clutching the heavy scrolls. They threatened him, saying his disciples would all die as human shields if he did not cooperate. So with absolutely no other choice, he memorized every single piece of information, like his very life depended on it. But in the end, it was all for nothing. Staring into the dark night, So-eun wonders if things would have been different if he had fought on the front lines instead of hiding with books. Or better yet, if he had just focused on becoming a stronger martial artist. Lying on the ground, a dying So-eun curses the heavens for giving him such a useless ability. He laments not getting a useful power like inner energy that could actually save someone. As his breathing slows down, a faint green light begins to emanate from the jade bracelet on his bloody wrist. Something strange is happening as his life slips away. The regret of his impending death cuts him to his very core. He wishes more than anything that he had been strong enough to change their tragic fate. A brilliant surge of emerald energy erupts around him, lighting up the dark surroundings. This powerful glow seems to react to his desperate wish to protect his disciples. He never wanted to beg others for protection ever again. He wanted the strength to stand on his own 2 feet and guard the people he cherished. With his final thoughts fading away, a crimson title screen appears to signal the end of his tragic first life. But this is not where his story ends. Suddenly, a clear sunny sky appears overhead with falling leaves. A voice calls out to So-un, mockingly asking him if this is really all he has got. A wooden practice sword repeatedly pokes him in the head. The voice calls him a complete idiot and notes that even his young disciples could hold out longer than him. So-un looks up to see a hand holding a wooden sword. He groans, thinking this cursed perfect memory of his is playing tricks on him in his final moments. He grits his teeth as the pain feels incredibly vivid. He complains that his deathbed hallucination is taking things way too far by making him relive this. With a sudden scream, So-un bolts upright, clutching his face in sheer agony. He cannot believe his mind is making him feel physical pain even after death. But as he opens his eyes and looks around, he stops screaming in confusion. The surroundings look incredibly familiar, yet entirely out of place for a dying man. He looks down at his hands, completely stunned to see himself wearing a clean and youthful training uniform. He wonders out loud where on earth he is. He scans the entire courtyard, recognizing it instantly. It is the training grounds of his old home at the Taeil sect. Standing right in front of him are his 2 junior disciples, looking completely baffled by his strange behavior. They stare at him with wide and concerned eyes. Seeing their young and uninjured faces makes So-un break out into a nervous sweat. His heart beats wildly as the reality of the situation starts to sink in. He does not hesitate for a single second and rushes forward as fast as his legs can carry him. He throws his arms around them, pulling his beloved disciples into a tight and desperate embrace. Tears start welling up in his eyes as he holds on to them. The pink-haired junior girl struggles against the sudden hug, yelling at him that he is being totally gross. She asks what on earth is wrong with him. The brown-haired boy named Jumpyo is also completely caught off guard. He nervously asks if something terrible happened to make their senior act this way. A group of adorable tiny disciples watch from a distance, whispering to each other. They wonder what kind of weird prank Senior Jin is pulling this time. Crying tears of joy. So-un decides that even if this is just a final life flash before he dies, he is going to enjoy every second of it. Having a perfect memory finally came in handy. With a bright, tearful smile, he holds his juniors close. He realizes that getting to see their faces one last time is a pretty good way to go out. So-un pinches his junior cheek, cooing about how incredibly cute she used to be when she was little. She blushes furiously and tries to swat his hand away. He then turns to Jumpyo, pinching his cheek too, and teasing him about his old bedwetting habits. Jumpyo stammers in embarrassment, wishing So-un would stop talking about the past. The 2 annoyed juniors immediately start beating him up in the background. Even as he takes the comical beating, So-un joyfully thinks this hallucination is the best thing ever. The peaceful moment is ruined when an arrogant guy with a wooden sword speaks up. He threatens to beat up the junior disciples if So-un does not pick up his sword and fight him. So-un's joyful expression instantly vanishes into a deadpan look. He grumbles to himself about why his mind had to summon this absolute jerk of all people. This bully is Gai Kyeol-young, the son of a wealthy trading company. He used to abuse his family financial support as an excuse to beat the Taeil disciples half to death. So-un calmly reaches down and picks up a wooden practice sword. He decides that if his brain is going to force him to relive this, he might as well enjoy some much-needed payback. He stands tall and points his wooden sword forward with a confident grin. He figures this is the perfect chance to settle an old score from his past. Seeing So-un's sudden confidence, Gai Kyeol-young grits his teeth in anger as his face twists into a malicious smirk. He prepares to launch his attack. With a furious roar, Kyeol-young lunges forward, swinging his wooden sword with aggressive force. He calls So-un an arrogant little bastard. So-un calmly watches the incoming attack, his eyes tracking every single movement. He recognizes the style as the Samyang sword, a technique he was forced to endure countless times. A brief depiction shows the origin of this wanderer sword style, known for its wild and unpredictable movements. It relies on raw momentum to completely overwhelm opponents. Cheol-young deliberately aims his strike straight at So-eun's eyes, a dirty tactic meant to permanently blind his opponents. But So-eun easily tilts his head back and dodges it without breaking a sweat. The young disciples watch in absolute terror, fearing the worst. So-eun remembers how back then he had memorized all these movements but lacked the speed and strength to actually counter them. But things are completely different now. Compared to the monstrous, bloodthirsty killers of the demonic cult that So-eun fought for years, this bully moves are laughably slow. So-eun smoothly sidesteps. Another wild swing, keeping his eyes closed with a smug and bored expression. The attack does not even come close to touching him. Cheol-young's eyes widen in sheer shock as his attack misses entirely. He cannot comprehend how a weakling is suddenly dodging his best moves so easily. In So-eun's mind, this slow-motion fight is absolutely nothing compared to the deadly high-tier martial arts techniques he had to memorize in the Alliance archives. He recalls the legendary S-Soshan sword art, a high-level technique that seemed completely impossible for someone of his status to ever learn back then. A powerful mental image of the advanced sword style flashes through his mind, showing a whirlwind of blades. Because of his perfect memory, he knows every single stance by heart. With a calm posture, So-eun prepares to put those legendary forms to the test for the very first time. His eyes glow with a sharp, focused light as he takes a solid stance, channeling his movements with pure precision. With a swift and graceful motion, So-eun unleashes the S-Soshan sword art, his wooden sword cutting through the air like a streak of light. The attack lands with devastating force, completely shattering Cheol-young's defense and sending him reeling backward in agonizing pain. Cheol-young is utterly stunned, sweat dripping down his face as he realizes his opponent just used a high-level technique. Meanwhile, So-eun just smiles and thoroughly enjoys the moment. With a cocky grin on his face, So-eun prepares to deliver the final and satisfying blow. He swings his wooden sword down hard, cracking it right over Cheol-young's head. The impact is loud and incredibly satisfying to watch. We see a wide shot of the blow landing, sending a shockwave through the courtyard. The arrogant bully gets completely flattened by the single strike. So-eun calmly rests his wooden sword on his shoulder, looking down at the defeated bully who is now groaning in the dirt. The junior disciples stand frozen in absolute disbelief. They cannot believe their supposedly weak senior just cracked open the head of the wealthy trading company's son with a basic sword art. Cheol-young clutches his bleeding forehead, screaming in anger and humiliation. He warns So-eun that he is going to make him pay dearly for this. Raging with fury, the bully yells that So-eun will have to take full responsibility for what he just did to him. But So-eun does not care at all, calmly standing over the pathetic boy who is now crawling away on the ground. The little disciples watch the scene unfold, their mouths wide open in pure awe. Suddenly, the entire courtyard erupts into cheers. The kids jump for joy, shouting Senior Jin's name and praising him for his epic victory. So-eun smirks to himself, feeling incredibly satisfied. He thinks to himself that beating the absolute crap out of Guy Cheol-young was the best final wish he could have asked for. Holding his wooden sword triumphantly, So-eun declares to the sky that he can now pass away peacefully with absolutely no regrets left in this world. Out of nowhere, a sharp chop lands directly on his head. He lets out a painful yelp, his eyes nearly popping out of his skull. The pink-haired junior girl stands over him with a furious face, screaming at him to ask if he has completely lost his mind. So-eun rubs his throbbing cheek, completely baffled. He wonders why on earth a deathbed hallucination would feel this incredibly painful. He looks at his hand in shock as a sudden realization hits him. If he can feel physical pain this clearly, then something is definitely off. He looks around the training ground once more, his eyes wide with a mix of dread and confusion. He slowly starts to realize this might not be a dream after all. The pink-haired girl glares at him with a menacing smile. She sweetly asks what they are supposed to do if the trading company cuts off their financial support because of his reckless actions. Before he can even answer, she delivers another powerful slap to his head, telling him to stop spouting nonsense. So-eun gets knocked off balance, falling backward onto the stone ground as his brain struggles to process the situation. With his soul practically escaping his mouth, So-eun finally accepts the truth. He has not died at all, but somehow traveled all the way back into his own past. We open inside a quiet room filled with traditional medicine drawers. It seems like a peaceful medical infirmary. Jin So-eun slowly opens his eyes, finding himself lying in a bed with bandages wrapped around his swollen face. He looks completely dazed, as if his brain has not fully booted up yet. Taking a moment to rest in the quiet infirmary, he tries to piece together exactly how he ended up back in his younger body. He remembers how it all started in his previous life, with the terrifying rise of the demonic cult. His own Taeil sect was dragged into the conflict by the Murim alliance and pushed to the very brink of destruction. Because of his incredibly rare photographic memory, he was chosen for a crucial mission. While others fought on the front lines, he was locked away to memorize the Alliance's entire archive of secret texts. Surrounded by towering stacks of ancient books, he worked tirelessly, using his unique gift to store every bit of knowledge. He even offered to memorize every single document without missing a single letter, completely committing his mind to the task. In exchange for his dedication, he begged the Alliance leaders to spare his junior disciples and pull them out of the deadly war zone. But instead of keeping their promise, the corrupt leaders decided his mind was too dangerous to be kept alive. They betrayed him, showing that the Righteous Alliance was just as cold-blooded as their enemies. And then, just when he thought his life was over, he woke up in the past. It is a genuine second chance to change everything. The best part is that all of the legendary martial arts manuals he memorized are still completely intact inside his head. With those high-level techniques at his disposal, he easily defeated Gai Keol-yong, a bully he never could have beaten in his original timeline. Sitting on his bed, So-eun scratches his head in deep thought. He still cannot quite grasp how this time travel magic actually happened. While checking his body, he notices the jade bracelet on his wrist. It seems his physical body went back in time, and only this mysterious azure dragon ring traveled back with him. This bracelet was a trophy he took from a high-ranking cult member in his past life. He distinctly remembers it glowing with a strange green light right as he fell off the cliff. His thoughts are suddenly cut short by someone shouting furiously outside the doors. An angry voice demands that the Taeil sect immediately hand over Jin So-eun. So-eun casually looks toward the door, still chewing on a wooden toothpick. It seems the angry mob has already arrived at his doorstep. Outside, the Taeil sect leader is bowing repeatedly to a very wealthy and angry man. The guest is furious, demanding to see the kid who dared to lay a hand on his son. The sect leader tries his best to defuse the situation, apologizing profusely and explaining that So-eun also fainted from the duel. He begs the angry merchant to overlook the incident just this once. This angry visitor is Yeon-seok, the powerful leader of the Gairong merchant group. He demands severe punishment for So-eun, calling him a lowly bumpkin who does not know his place. The sect leader bows his head all the way to the floor, begging for forgiveness. He is willing to take all the humiliation just to protect his disciple. Watching this through the screen door, So-eun remembers how this meekness led to disaster in his past life. He recalls the horrific sight of his friends lying dead on the battlefield. He remembers the lifeless eyes of his pink-haired junior, a tragic victim of a war they were never prepared for. He remembers the body of Jumpyo, another precious life cut short because their sect was too weak to protect them. And finally, his own past body lying broken in the mud. He is completely determined to make sure this second life plays out differently. With a sharp glare, So-eun bites down hard, snapping his wooden toothpick right in half. The time for being weak and submissive is officially over. He slides off the infirmary bed and stands up, adjusting his sleeves with a cool and confident posture. He tucks a special wooden plaque securely into his belt, preparing himself for the inevitable confrontation. With a devious smirk, So-eun decides it is finally time to go out there and stir things up a bit. Back outside, the sect leader continues to thank Yeon-seok, genuinely believing the merchant group is actually showing mercy. Yeon-seok laughs arrogantly, claiming he will generously overlook the matter this time, fully expecting the sect to remain under his thumb. Suddenly, So-eun jumps down from the roof, landing gracefully right in front of them with an unbothered expression. He casually announces his arrival, completely shocking everyone. He offers a sarcastic bow, introducing himself as the lowly bumpkin they were desperately searching for. The sect leader gasps in surprise, totally shocked to see So-eun out of bed and acting so bold. Yeon-seok's face twists with rage as he points an accusing finger at So-eun, identifying him as the brat who dared to hurt his precious son. So-eun casually picks at his ear, asking why the old man is calling him a brat when they are not even that far apart in age. Both the merchant and the sect leader freeze, staring at him with hilarious and dumbfounded expressions. They cannot believe the absolute audacity of this kid. So, unfolds his hands and explains that making such a massive fuss over a standard duel is incredibly embarrassing. He mockingly asks if the father plans to follow his son all the way to the academy just to fight his battles there too. Yeon Seok screams in fury, claiming his son is a genius who should not even be wasting his time training at a third-rate place like the Taeil sect. So, unrolls his eyes, pointing out that over 10 of his own junior disciples were hospitalized by Keol. Young, brutal actions, yet absolutely no one complained. He gets right in the merchant face with a cold and piercing glare. He tells him that if his genius son lost to a lowly bumpkin from a third-rate sect, then it is the father who is living in a dream world. The merchant leader is left trembling with pure rage, his face turning red as he sputters, completely unable to form a proper comeback. Losing his temper completely, Yeon Seok grabs the sect leader collar. He threatens to immediately cut off all financial sponsorship for the Taeil sect if they do not force So-yoon to take responsibility. So-un looks on with a calm expression, completely unbothered by the threat of losing their funding. The merchant sneers, pointing out that the Taeil sect is a failing third-rate group on the brink of extinction, and he could easily take his money elsewhere. He gloats that without his financial support, the entire sect will starve by tomorrow. An informational box explains that the Taeil sect is technically part of the Baekpalbong, the 108 main sects of the Murim alliance. However, they have lost all of their former glory, remaining a prestigious sect in name only while struggling to survive day by day. Because of their status, they still hold one major privilege, which allows them to recommend one disciple directly into the prestigious Murim Academy without any entrance exam. That special recommendation is exactly why the wealthy merchant group was sponsoring the sect in the first place, hoping to buy a free pass for their mediocre son. But So-un has absolutely no intention of letting them abuse that privilege anymore. So-un steps forward confidently, telling the merchant to go ahead and cut off the sponsorship. He boldly states that he will take full responsibility for the consequences. Leaning in close, So-un flashes a cheeky grin and says he has a very curious question to ask the wealthy merchant. Before the merchant can react, So-un firmly grabs him by the wrist. He notes that there is less than a year left before the Academy special admission selection. Grinning like a villain, So-un asks why a wealthy man would send his precious son to such a pathetic third-rate sect instead of any of the other prestigious academies. He asks if it is because his son was rejected by every single one of them. Yeon Seok is left sweating and trembling, completely overwhelmed by the kid's sharp tongue and sudden physical dominance. He struggles to pull his hand away, screaming about his high status and how a mere brat has no right to speak to him this way. The merchant panics, screaming at the sect leader to control his disciple. He desperately tries to reassert his power, claiming only his money can save their dying sect. But So-un knows the truth. In his past life, even after getting his son into the academy, this greedy merchant cut off their sponsorship anyway. The Ji-rong group was always planning to abandon them the moment they got what they wanted. Yeon Seok eye twitches with absolute rage, realizing this kid has completely seen through his plans. So-un casually turns around and walks away, leaving the stunned merchant behind. He knows there is absolutely no point in begging corrupt people for protection. To survive the coming storm, he needs to build his own strength rather than relying on false sponsors. The sect leader has to physically hold back the raging merchant, who is screaming curses at So-un back. This fierce determination is the ultimate lesson So-un learned from his brutal death in his previous life. As night falls, we see a quiet, dark forest surrounding the mountain peak. The morning sun begins to rise over the scenic cliffs, marking the start of a brand new day. So-un walks deep into a mysterious web-covered forest. He knows he has to find a quick way to boost his strength. He realizes that relying solely on his sect basic training in sword arts will not be enough to survive the future war. He needs a massive shortcut. The best way to gain immense inner energy quickly is by consuming rare spiritual herbs, like the legendary 10,000-year fire ginseng. Luckily, the exact location, appearance times, and harvesting methods of every single spiritual herb are fully memorized inside his head. His plan is to use his knowledge to track down and eat these rare herbs one by one. The only major problem is the terrifying human-faced spider that guards this specific cave. He takes a deep breath, preparing himself for the dangerous task ahead. Retrieving this ginseng is his very first step toward true greatness. He visualizes himself dashing forward, executing a flawless sword strike to pin down the guardian monster in a single cinematic blow. But then he snaps back to reality with a silly face. He admits his current physical strength and inner energy are far too weak to actually pull off a direct attack. So he decides to play dirty. A little later, he lights a wooden branch and prepares to use fire to smoke out the beast. A massive, terrifying human-faced spider screeches as it is suddenly engulfed in bright orange flames. So, Untrap worked perfectly. The monster thrashes around in agony, its multiple red eyes wide with panic. So, knows that winning by any means necessary is all that matters. He leaps through the fiery cavern, holding his improvised torch high as the spider burns below. Clenching his fist, So-un smiles at the burning beast, thankful for the invaluable knowledge he stole from the Alliance. The chapter wraps up with an official encyclopedia entry detailing the properties of the 10,000-year fire ginseng and the weakness of its guardian. We flash back to the start of the chapter, where the massive, defeated human-faced spider lies dead with wooden swords pinned to its head. A quiet stream of mountain water drips down the stone walls, creating a peaceful atmosphere inside the deep cave. So-un sits quietly by the puddle, staring down at his hands with a deeply unsatisfied expression. He lets out a frustrated sigh, clutching his hands as he realizes his current progress is far from what he expected. He suddenly screams in rage, his face contorting in sheer frustration. It is simply not enough to survive what is coming. He looks over at the withered fire ginseng plant. He cannot believe his inner energy is still this low, even after consuming the entire legendary herb. So-un clutches his chest, realizing the basic Taiyul mental technique has too many limitations, or perhaps he is just lacking the talent to properly absorb the energy. He collapses onto his knees in despair, staring at the wet stone floor. At this rate, he will not stand a single chance. With all of the terrifying tragedies destined to happen in the future, his current strength is practically useless. Kneeling alone in the dark web-filled cave, he feels the heavy burden of his second chance. He remembers Serion's bloody face on the battlefield, a horrific memory he is determined to prevent at all costs. He remembers Junpyo's tragic end, swearing that none of his precious companions will be used as expendable shields this time. To protect them, he must become a legendary and powerful figure in the martial world, and that requires rapid growth. He claws his fingers against the hard stone floor in frustration, knowing he will not even pass the academy entrance exam if he stays this week. Sweating and breathing heavily, he desperately racks his brain for a solution to his stagnant growth. As water slowly drips from the icy stalactites above, he repeats his singular goal of finding more inner energy. The drip hits the puddle, and a sudden brilliant idea sparks in his mind. So-un's eyes widen with a sharp realization. He suddenly remembers Gai Chiol's young, prized spiritual pill from Manhwa. He recalls how the wealthy merchant spent a fortune to purchase the legendary Seolmei pill for his son back in the original timeline. But right before Chil-young could take it, the pill was mysteriously stolen from their vault, leaving the family in absolute chaos. The identity of the thief was never revealed, meaning the stolen treasure is still up for grabs if So-un can track them down first. He knows that every thief leaves a trace, and with his perfect memory, he is highly confident he can piece the clues together. He visualizes the massive archive of documents he memorized in his past life, preparing to dig deep for any information regarding the heist. He focuses his mind, recalling the official monthly reports sent by the Murim Alliance local branch. He begins to mentally navigate through the complex web of reports, tracing the movement of suspicious figures around the area. His mind moves rapidly through the filing shelves, connecting the dots of old mission logs. He pulls up the specific records of the local security patrols, searching for any unusual activity on the night of the theft. He maps out the entire city, tracking the escape routes and matching them against the profiles of known thieves. A glowing red book of secretive records appears in his mental library, containing the exact clue he needs. By lining up the puzzle pieces and using logical deduction, So-un successfully identifies the thief identity and escape route, ready to stage a perfect ambush. In the present, So-un is already hiding in the shadows of the vault, watching as the unsuspecting thief finally steals the box. He offers a sarcastic, polite gesture, thoroughly amused by how incredibly useful his walking library memory has turned out to be. With a victorious grin, So-un leaps down to take the prize, fully prepared to claim the Sealmay pill as his own. He reaches out his hand to seize the box, his master plan executing without a single hitch. But just as he touches the area, he is suddenly distracted as his jade bracelet begins to pulse with a strange energy. He looks down in confusion, noticing the azure dragon ring is glowing with a powerful emerald light. This unexpected reaction is where the absorption first began. As So-un watches in shock, a brilliant emerald aura begins to burst from the jade bracelet on his wrist. He cannot help but gasp, wondering what kind of strange power has suddenly been unleashed. Violent currents of dark green energy begin to swirl rapidly through the entire cavern. The raw power is so overwhelming that it looks like a miniature storm has formed right around him. In the center of the vortex, a glowing crimson core is pulled directly out of the dead spider body. The ring seems to be acting as a powerful magnet for the beast's leftover energy. So-un watches with wide eyes as the azure dragon ring continues to siphon the core power. It turns out this demonic cult relic has some incredibly useful hidden features he never knew about. A blinding flash of pure energy erupts from the cave entrance, casting a bright light over the surrounding forest. Sitting cross-legged amidst the swirling dark mist, So-un focuses his breathing to absorb the massive influx of raw power. He looks like a seasoned master channeling a deep transformation. As the dark mist slowly evaporates, So-un takes a slow, deep breath to stabilize his newly expanded energy reserves. He slowly opens his eyes, which are now glowing with a sharp, brilliant blue light. He lets out a quiet chuckle, already feeling the massive change within his body. Standing up, So-un clenches his fist as bright blue electricity crackles around his knuckles. He is absolutely ecstatic, laughing in pure disbelief at how easily his strength just skyrocketed. He recalls the origin of the Azure Dragon Ring, a legendary relic once owned by a powerful Dharma protector of the demonic cult. He managed to claim it during a hard-fought victory in his previous life. He originally kept the bracelet as a simple memento of their massive sacrifice, never expecting it to suddenly activate and save his life like this. He tightens his grip as the dark crackling energy surges through his hand once more. To test his new power, So-un throws a massive punch into the air, unleashing a colossal shockwave that shatters the stone floor of the cavern. The ring successfully purified the twisted energy of the human-faced spider before feeding it directly into So-un. This pure energy has now naturally integrated with his Tail mental technique. Standing amidst the swirling blue wind, So-un smiles up at the ceiling. He figures the heavens have not completely abandoned him, especially since this treasure just made him significantly stronger. With his inner energy boosted so heavily, his path to entering the prestigious academy just became a whole lot easier. Meanwhile, we cut to a grand, brightly lit banquet hall decorated with red lanterns. The local merchants are all gathered to celebrate a major event. At the center of the party, Guy Chil-yong is loudly boasting to the other guests about a legendary spiritual medicine. He explains that the Sealmay pill is highly coveted within the Manhwa sect. He continues to brag, noting how incredibly rare the pill is and how his wealthy father acquired it solely to secure his successful future. Standing nearby, Hong Se-yeon looks on with a deeply annoyed expression. She wonders where on earth So-un went off to while this annoying show-off is talking. She looks down with a quiet and worried expression, remembering the chaotic events of that fateful day. She recalls Gi Kiol, young, bloody face, a vivid reminder of how So-un boldly stood up to the bully to protect their sect future. After that massive incident, So-un went missing, leaving the sect behind. Gi Yeon-seok has been visiting their grounds every single day, pressure building on everyone. The arrogant bully and his father continue to gossip at the banquet, calling So-un a complete and utter fool who got exactly what he deserved. Suddenly, a young disciple boy runs up to Se-yeon, happily carrying a plate of delicious food from the buffet. Another young disciple rushes over with a giant roasted chicken leg, eagerly offering it to their beloved senior sister. The children crowd around her, happily offering her all the best treats from the banquet. They tell her the food is amazing and she has to try some. In the background, Guy Chil-yong glares at the happy children with pure disgust. He mutters to himself that he will deal with those annoying Teal sect brats as soon as the banquet is over. Se-yeon looks at the kids with a warm, gentle smile, teasingly asking why they brought all this food to her instead of eating in the dining hall themselves. One of the clever disciples giggles and teases her, asking if she was staring off into space because she was thinking about Senior Jin again. Sarion's face instantly turns bright red with embarrassment. She stammers angrily at the kids, completely caught off guard by their sudden teasing. The boys happily explain that they wanted to save some food for So-un, knowing he probably has not had dinner yet. They want to make sure their favorite senior gets to eat. Hearing their sweet and loyal words, Sarion's flustered expression softens into a quiet and touched look. But to change the subject, she suddenly snatches the food and stuffs her face, letting out a massive comical burp that leaves the boys completely horrified. With a mischievous grin, Sarion threatens to steal all their delicious food if they do not start eating right now. The terrified kids immediately start crying and gobbling up their food as fast as possible, not wanting their greedy senior sister to take any more. Sarion laughs heartily at their silly reactions, though she still quietly worries about So-un, wondering what on earth he is doing, leaving them all behind. As the night continues, the beautiful red lanterns glow brightly against the twilight sky. The full moon shines down on the elegant palace rooftops, casting a scenic glow over the entire celebration. Inside the lively banquet hall, the wealthy merchants continue to drink, laugh, and toast to their massive prosperity. The guests are having a great time, clinking their cups together and getting thoroughly drunk on the premium wine. A group of talented dancers perform gracefully in the center of the hall, their long silk ribbons flowing through the air. Outside, a set of throwing daggers silently cuts through the air, knocking out the mansion guards on the roof in an instant. A shadowy thief clad in dark blue clothes leaps down silently from the high-tiled roof, moving like a ghost. The intruder slips past the remaining security without making a single sound, heading straight toward the inner vault. Quietly chuckling to himself, the masked thief creeps through the dark corridors, highly confident in his stealth skills. This thief is Jujangmook, the notorious wandering soul hunter. He successfully locates and unlocks the merchant's secret vault, holding a small wooden chest. He opens the chest, and a brilliant pink light shines on his face. Inside lies the legendary Manhwa spiritual pill. He shivers with pure excitement, quickly packing the priceless medicine away as he prepares to make his escape. With a smug grin, the thief moves toward the exit, thinking this was the absolute easiest heist of his entire career. But suddenly, So-un drops down from the ceiling like a meteor, landing a heavy kick that sends the thief crashing onto the floor. So-un casually apologizes for the interruption as he snatches the red box directly from the thief's bloody hand. Standing tall with a cool expression, So-un holds up the box, announcing that he needs this spiritual pill just as much as the thief does. We return to the moment of the heist as So-un easily snatches the red box away from the thief. He offers a mock apology, making it crystal clear that he is not letting this prize go. With a cold and calculating look, So-un stares down at the spiritual pill. He is ready to take whatever shortcuts are necessary to secure his future. A transition box takes us back in time, explaining that these events actually began a few days before the famous Sealmay pill theft occurred. Inside a dusty rustic shop, rows of vicious metal traps are displayed on wooden shelves. It seems So-un decided to stock up on some highly specialized tools for his upcoming plan. We get a closer look at the heavy-duty traps lining the shelves. Each one looks sharp enough to easily snap through bone. A heavy wooden door creaks open as So-un enters the store, immediately drawing the attention of the rugged shopkeeper. So-un explains that he came to this specific shop after hearing rumors that they deal in rare and hard-to-find items. Standing confidently in the center of the room, So-un casually asks the shopkeeper if he has any traps designed for catching human prey. The shopkeeper stops what he is doing, letting out a surprised chuckle. He notes that So-un is certainly one of the most interesting customers he has had in a very long time. The rugged craftsman shows off his work, boasting that he has traps of every size from rabbit catchers to massive bear traps. He jokingly adds that he does not usually make them for people. So-un plops a heavy sack of gold coins onto the counter, asking for their strongest tiger or bear traps instead. The shopkeeper warns him that using such brutal traps will completely ruin any animal pelts. Looking at his reflection in a polished metal blade, So-un coldly explains that he has absolutely no intention of skinning his prey. He just needs a trap so sensitive that the slightest touch triggers it and strong enough to rip a bare leg clean off. With a playful and almost villainous grin, So-un wonders out loud if they should just use traps that send their targets straight to the afterlife in one go. The shopkeeper sweat drops, his veteran intuition screaming at him that selling these highly modified death traps to this kid is probably a terrible idea. We flash forward to the night of the heist. So-eun stands over the defeated body of the thief in the dark forest, the first part of his plan completely finished. In a flashback, we see the thief boasting about his skills. He admits he expected a tough fight because the merchant guard was famous, but he still succeeded. The thief smiles smugly as he admires the stolen red box containing the priceless spiritual pill. Suddenly, a foot steps into the clearing behind him. A voice mockingly congratulates the thief, calling him their reliable senior brother. It turns out 2 corrupt swordsmen from the Jeomchang sect were secretly conspiring with the thief all along, planning to steal the pill for themselves. The 2 traitors callously planned to dispose of the thief body, agreeing that the wandering soul hunter should simply be listed as missing from now on. Before they clean up the crime scene, they eagerly decide to open the box and admire the legendary pill they worked so hard to get. As they open the wooden chest, a brilliant purple glow illuminates their greedy faces, revealing the precious Sealmay pill. They laugh greedily, praising the pill's vivid color and its sweet plum blossom fragrance. But their joy is cut short as they realize they have 2 mouths to feed and only 1 pill to share. Before their greed can turn them against each other, they suddenly hear a noise in the shadows and spin around in a panic. So-eun suddenly leaps past them like a shadow, snatching the pill container right out of their hands in a flash. He slides to a halt on the grassy ground, holding the stolen box with a highly satisfied smirk beneath his mask. The 2 Jeomchang swordsmen immediately draw their blades, screaming at each other to catch the masked thief before he can escape into the forest. One of the swordsmen lunges forward in a rage, yelling that So-eun will pay dearly for coveting something far above his station. So-eun mockingly fires back, calling them shameless hypocrites for stealing it first. As he dashes through the dark trees, So-eun mockingly asks if this cowardly backstabbing is really what they teach them at the prestigious Jeomchang sect. He leaps gracefully over the thick branches, easily keeping his lead as the furious swordsmen pursue him. The angry swordsmen swing their blades as they chase him down, absolutely desperate to reclaim their stolen fortune. So-eun effortlessly vaults over a patch of leaves, casually turning back to warn them to watch their step. The younger swordsman ignores the warning and steps right onto a hidden bear trap, which snaps shut with a brutal bone-crushing force. The senior swordsman's eyes widen in horror as he hears the sickening crunch of metal on bone. So-eun looks back with a smug, mocking grin, happily declaring that his trap landed a perfect bullseye. The younger brother falls to the ground, screaming in absolute agony as the heavy metal teeth sink deep into his leg. His painful screams echo loudly through the quiet moonlit forest, completely shattering the peaceful night. The senior swordsman rushes to his brother's side in a panic, while So-eun mockingly reminds them that he literally just told them to watch their step. Gritting his teeth in pure rage, the senior swordsman curses So-eun, calling him a cowardly weakling who relies on cheap underhanded tricks instead of fighting like a true warrior. He points his glowing blade at So-eun, demanding that the masked thief reveal his true identity and face him in a fair duel. So-eun points to himself with an amused shrug, completely unfazed by the swordsman's self-righteous anger. He mockingly asks if the swordsman wants him to recite a traditional and honorable introduction like a proper martial artist. So-eun kicks a small pebble, calling their obsession with honor and status incredibly tacky and outdated. Infuriated by the disrespect, the senior swordsman lunges forward with a powerful wind-splitting strike, desperate to slice the mocking thief in half. With his face contorted in rage, the swordsman declares that he is the rightful owner of the Sealmay pill, and anyone who stands in his way must die. So-eun easily dodges the strike, his body surrounded by a faint blue aura. He calmly states that both of them are just greedy assassins who murdered their own ally on their way to a heist. The narration asks how So-eun could have possibly known the exact identities and crimes of these 2 rogue swordsmen. He found the crucial clues while reviewing the old Alliance archives in his head. He noticed that the moment the pill went missing, all records of the wandering soul hunter vanished completely. By connecting the reports with his mental red strings, he discovered that these 2 specific Jeomchang swordsmen suddenly experienced a massive boost in their inner energy around the exact same time. This made it highly likely that they had murdered the thief to keep the pill for themselves, hiding the evidence deep in the forest. Hearing this detailed breakdown, the two brothers are left completely paralyzed with shock. They cannot believe this random masked kid knows their exact names and darkest secrets. So, Un looks down at them with a cold, confident expression. He confirms that he knows absolutely everything about the famous 5 swords of Jeomchang. The senior swordsman desperately tries to threaten him, warning So-un that the entire Jeomchang sect and the Murim alliance will hunt him down for this disrespect. So-un deadpans, pointing out how hilarious it is for a thief to threaten another thief with the law while they are actively committing a crime in the middle of the woods. The swordsman swings his blade again in a desperate attempt to silence him, but So-un easily slides beneath the strike with practiced agility. Their wooden and metal blades clash with a loud ring, generating a shockwave that blows away the surrounding leaves. As they fight, multiple hidden bear traps suddenly spring open all around them in the grass. The swordsmen realize they have been lured into a deadly minefield of metal. So-un tells them to brace themselves as the traps continue to snap shut. He mockingly thanks the younger brother for testing the first trap for him. He turns around and vanishes into the dark shadows of the dense forest, leaving his opponents behind. The senior swordsman screams at his brother to ignore the pain and chase after the fleeing thief before they lose the pill forever. The younger brother limps forward, warning his senior to be extremely careful since the path ahead is likely covered in even more hidden traps. The arrogant senior scoffs, claiming they have absolutely nothing to worry about as long as they step exactly where the thief stepped. So-un glides lightly across the ground, deliberately leaving clear and obvious footprints on the soft dirt to guide his pursuers. The two swordsmen run quickly, carefully matching their steps to So-un's visible footprints. They confidently follow the trail, believing they have completely outsmarted the kid trap layout. The senior swordsman laughs triumphantly as he closes the distance, boasting that So-un's cheap childish tricks have completely failed. So-un suddenly leaps high into the air, performing a dramatic flip over a wide clearing. He lands smoothly on the other side, turning around to face his pursuers with a very smug, relaxed expression. The swordsmen gloat as they corner him, believing they have finally won the chase and are about to end his life. The senior swordsman confidently takes his final step forward, descending directly onto the grass. So-un's eye widens with absolute amusement beneath his mask, knowing the trap is about to spring. The swordsman's heavy boot lands directly on a hidden patch of leaves. The smug smile instantly vanishes from the swordsman's face as his eyes stretch wide with a sudden and terrifying realization. Another massive bear trap snaps shut with a brutal metal-rending crunch, crushing the senior brother foot completely. A heavy spray of blood splatters across the green grass as both brothers are left completely crippled. A glowing overlay reveals a massive field packed densely with active traps. So-un explains that the spots he stepped on were so incredibly narrow that his pursuers had to copy his movements with absolute millimeter-level precision to survive. The crippled swordsman groans in sheer agony, sweating profusely as he realizes the sheer insanity of setting up such a complex trap layout in the dark. He stares up at So-un in pure terror, asking how on earth a mere human could memorize and navigate such a deadly minefield so flawlessly. So-un slowly draws his sword, a cold gleam reflecting off the steel. He calmly explains that his perfect memory is the one and only gift the gods ever gave him. He delivers a swift and graceful slash through the dark, completely ending the threat of the two corrupt swordsmen. A heavy spray of blood cuts across the pale moonlight as the battle finally concludes. The next morning, we see a beautiful grand mansion located in the city of Hapi. It is the local headquarters of the Tail sect. Inside, a hand holding a warm cup of tea sits on a table. A voice muses about the Tail sect, remembering them as one of the 108 main sects. We see two high-ranking officials drinking tea together. One of them is identified as the chief strategist of the Murim alliance. The other official is Namgung Taiwan, a powerful elder from the Namgung clan. He notes that several stronger and more active sects have recently emerged in the Hapi region. He suggests that it might finally be time to replace the fading Tail sect with a much more powerful and useful main group. The chief strategist sips his tea, guessing that the elder is referring to the rapidly expanding Iron Sword sect. He notes that the rumors circulating within the alliance seem to be true. Namgung Taiwan laughs greedily, pouring some fresh tea as he schemes to expand his own massive influence. The strategist reminds him that according to Alliance rules, a main sect cannot be stripped of its status unless they commit a very serious offense. Taiwan smiles deviously, asking if the struggling Taiyil sect has recently committed any convenient crimes they can use. The strategist pauses, explaining that there are heavy rumors accusing the Taiyil sect of abusing their special academy recommendation rights to run a corrupt money-making scheme. He explains that the sect is reportedly selling their prestigious privilege to the highest bidder just to secure their own survival. Namgung Taiwan smiles maliciously, absolutely thrilled to have found the perfect excuse to crush the Taiyil sect and secure a new ally in Hoppy. We return to the meeting between the chief strategist and Namgung Taiwan. The elder chief asks if the strategist is suggesting that the Taiyil sect has completely betrayed its honorable status. Namgung Taiwan smirks with a devious look, accusing the failing sect of discarding its responsibilities just to satisfy its own greed. Outside the elegant pavilion, a bird chirps peacefully on a tree branch, completely unaware of the political scheming happening inside. The two leaders sit across from each other in silence, the tension in the room growing heavier as they plan their next move. The strategist waves his hands defensively, claiming he has absolutely no personal desire to replace the Taiyil sect with another group. But his eyes tell a completely different story, glinting with a sharp calculating intelligence that reveals his true selfish motives. He explains that the special privileges were originally granted to honor the sects that fought bravely during the war, not to be sold off to the highest bidder. He pours another cup of tea, dramatically claiming that his heart is deeply broken to see such a sacred meaning being stained by corruption. Namgung Taiwan bows his head in fake solemnity, fully agreeing that they must take immediate action to preserve the alliance honor. Meanwhile, back in his private quarters, Soun stares down at a warm cup of tea, preparing his mind for a massive breakthrough. Sitting alone in the center of the dark room, he prepares to consume the stolen Siome pill to boost his stagnant inner energy. As he swallows the rare medicine, a brilliant blue aura begins to crackle around his face, signaling the start of the absorption process. Stripped to the waist, Soun sits in deep meditation as massive torrents of emerald and blue energy swirl violently around his body. The sheer amount of raw power filling the room is absolutely staggering. He grates his teeth, sweat dripping down his face as his body strains to process the immense spiritual energy. He focuses his breathing, focusing his mind to ensure not a single drop of the priceless medicine power goes to waste. Viewed from above, the swirling energy rings perfectly align with his body, seamlessly integrating the Manhwa pill power into his meridians. So, unclenches his fist as the final waves of energy settle into his body. He is thoroughly impressed by the pill's legendary reputation, having completed the absorption in record time. He lets out a triumphant shout of pure joy. With this single breakthrough, his current inner energy has completely surpassed the level he achieved in his entire previous life. His footsteps echo softly on the wooden stairs as he finally decides to leave his room after days of intense meditation. He enters the main lobby of the inn, casually greeting the staff with a relaxed smile. The young servant girl is so startled she nearly drops her tray. She is absolutely thrilled to see him, having worried that something terrible happened to him. She notes that he has been locked away for days, so casually brushes it off, asking her to quickly bring him anything edible since he is absolutely starving. The girl sweat drops in confusion, pointing out that the kitchen has been closed for hours and the staff are already asleep. So, plops down a heavy stack of silver coins, promising to make it worth their while and offering to pay a whole week rent in advance. The sight of the glittering coins instantly cures the girl's hesitation. She happily runs off to wake up the cook, while Soun smirks, realizing that money really can solve any problem. A massive, ferocious tiger roars loudly in the forest, marking the transition to how Soun acquired all that coin. By channeling the ring-glowing energy, he was able to target the natural beasts of the forest as well. He was able to easily drain the life force of a giant tiger, absorbing its raw vitality to further strengthen his own body. And as a great bonus, he brought the pristine tiger pelts back to the local craftsman, immediately selling them for a small fortune. The craftsman is left staring in absolute shock, holding the flawless pelts and wondering how a young kid could hunt such a beast. While he is happy to have found a steady way to make money, So-un knows he has a much bigger problem to worry about. The unique absorption ability of his Azure Dragon Ring is incredibly dangerous and could easily be mistaken for a forbidden demonic cult technique. If the Murim Alliance ever catches wind of this soul-draining power, it will not just be him who gets executed. The entire Taeil sect would be wiped out for harboring a demon. He clenches his fist, swearing that he must keep this power a complete secret. Sitting in the quiet tavern, he resolves to be extremely careful and never let anyone catch him using the ring. The servant girl happily returns, carrying a massive tray loaded with delicious and freshly cooked dishes. She boasts that the chef put his entire heart into preparing this midnight feast, and So-un eagerly prepares to dig in. The inn staff watch in absolute awe as So-un begins to inhale the food like a man who hasn't eaten in a year. Mid-chew, the servant girl casually asks him if he has heard the massive rumor currently spreading through the city. She explains that the wealthy Jirong merchant group recently threw a grand banquet, only for their priceless spiritual pill to be stolen right out of their secure vault. So-un suddenly stops chewing, his face turning pale as he realizes they are talking about his own secret heist. The girl adds that the thief must be an absolute master to pull off such a heist. She notes that the Murim Alliance has already dispatched a highly specialized investigation team. So-un violently chokes on his food, coughing dramatically as panic sets in. The worried girl quickly hands him a cup of water, while So-un desperately tries to play it cool, asking what the investigation team has managed to find. Sweating profusely, he asks if the Alliance has discovered any concrete evidence that could lead back to him. Internally, So-un is having a full mental breakdown. He realizes that if they catch an innocent suspect, it will be a complete disaster. But his panic instantly vanishes as the girl explains that the trail went completely cold and they found absolutely nothing. He lets out a massive sigh of relief, laughing at his own incredible luck. The girl complains that the theft ruined the local business, but she is excited because another grand banquet is about to be held in Hoppy. So-un looks up with a serious expression, asking which group is hosting the next party. She happily explains that the powerful Iron Sword sect is celebrating their leader's 60th birthday, expecting a massive turnout. Hearing the name of the Iron Sword sect triggers a dark, painful memory from So-un's previous life. His expression turns incredibly bitter. He remembers that this banquet was the exact moment his family tragedy first began. In his past life, his loving father was forced to kneel in front of a massive crowd of mocking martial artists during that very banquet. The memory of his father, tears, and public humiliation is etched deeply into So-un's perfect memory. His father had to beg the arrogant Iron Sword sect leader for forgiveness, completely destroying his pride. And the worst part is that the entire incident happened solely because of So-un's own foolish mistakes as a child. So-un clenches his fist so hard his knuckles turn white, utterly determined to rewrite history this time. He stares out the window, swearing to himself that he will stay far away from the Iron Sword sect to prevent the tragedy. With a cold and determined look, So-un suddenly stands up, leaving the startled servant girl behind as he walks away. As the servant girl runs down the stairs calling out to him, So-un's footsteps head straight out the door. He is already moving on to his next objective. With a determined stride, he vows never to let his father endure the same agonizing humiliation from his past life. He knows he has to take control of his destiny right now. Yet despite his vows to stay away, he finds himself right in the middle of the Iron Sword sect 60th birthday banquet. Before him, a massive warrior swings a colossal blade with terrifying power. A fierce and high-speed duel erupts between him and the elites of the Iron Sword sect. He is going to have to rely on every ounce of his newly boosted strength to survive this clash. We flash back to a few days ago at the entrance of the Taeil sect, where the weather is bright and sunny. Up on the wooden deck, Jumpio stretches out with a heavy sigh, complaining that his legs are absolutely killing him from the training. The younger disciples are completely exhausted, resting in the shade and drinking water after their intense practice session. Dong-ryong complains about having to perform 100 downward chops in the sweltering heat, questioning if this basic training actually helps at all. The other boys tease him, asking what happened to his vow to become just as cool as Senior Jin. He blushingly insists he only said he was proud of Senior Jin's victory. The disciples look up as one of them wonders aloud what Senior Jin could possibly be doing right now. Dong Ryong looks deeply worried, noting that this is the first time So-eun has vanished for over a week without saying where he was going. They wonder if So-eun is simply too embarrassed to return after causing such a massive scene with Guy Cheol-young. Or worse, they fear he might have left the sect entirely to protect them from the merchant group revenge. They agree that while So-eun could be incredibly annoying sometimes, he was ultimately a good person who genuinely cared about them. Suddenly, Dong Ryong points toward the main gate with a bright, joyful smile, shouting that Senior Jin has finally returned. So-eun slowly walks back through the main gate of the Tail sect, carrying a large bundle on his shoulder. As he enters, he reflects on his choice. He knows that skipping the banquet will save his father from immediate humiliation, but the sect will still face endless insults in the long run. He steps forward with a determined look, deciding that his entire sect must completely refuse to attend the Iron Sword Sect banquet. Standing under the main gate, he resolves to find a very solid excuse to keep the entire Tail sect safely at home. His deep thoughts are interrupted as the junior disciples spot him and immediately sprint over to greet him. The three brothers eagerly crowd around him, asking where he has been all this time. So-eun chuckles, teasingly asking if they missed him that much. The other disciples quickly join in, excitedly telling him they started training their sword arts again and begging him to teach them the epic move he used to defeat Guy. So-eun warmly pats the little kids on their heads, asking if they had been behaving and listening to their elders while he was away. Suddenly, a furious roar echoes through the courtyard, calling, So-eun, a shameless punk. It is Jintai-san, So-eun father and the outer hall master of the sect, looking incredibly stern and angry. Seeing his father's face, So-eun's eyes instantly well up with tears of pure joy and absolute relief. So-eun throws his arms around his father in a tight embrace, realizing how incredibly beautiful it is to see him alive and well in this second life. But his father comically chops him on the head, demanding to know if he thought playing crazy would get him out of the massive mess he created. Tae-san rages at him, explaining that his reckless stunt almost got the entire sect thrown out onto the streets, and the other hall masters are ready to tear him apart. The tense family reunion is interrupted as an arrogant Guy Cheol-young enters the courtyard, loudly demanding to see the brat. The bully points a finger at So-eun, calling his previous victory a cowardly trick and demanding a proper official match right now. So-eun looks at him with a devious and mocking smirk, more than happy to play along with the bully demands. He mockingly shields his eyes, dramatically shouting about how incredibly dazzling and bright Cheol-young aura is. He sarcastically praises the effects of the Seol-May pill, acting absolutely terrified and claiming a weakling like him could never defeat the mighty senior Guy. Cheol-young's face turns bright red with pure embarrassment, completely humiliated by So-eun's public mockery. Seol steps in, sharply telling Cheol-young to shut up and pointing out that his precious Seol-May pill was actually stolen. So-eun's father and Seol watch in disbelief as So-eun completely ignores the bully and begins unloading a giant sack of treats. He proudly presents a massive pile of expensive candies and taffy, leaving the kids absolutely thrilled and eager to dig in. The kids cheer in excitement, though Seol grumbles that he should have spent his money on useful rice instead of fancy snacks. She lets out a soft and touched sigh, realizing that even while he was away, all So-eun did was think of ways to make the disciples happy. Seol explains that the merchant group is currently too busy with the stolen pill investigation and the upcoming banquet to bother their sect right now. She firmly tells So-eun that he does not need to shoulder all the burdens by himself anymore and begs him never to disappear like that again. So-eun looks at her with a soft and slightly surprised expression, genuinely touched by her concern. But internally, he sweat drops, realizing he never actually worried about the merchants or intended to shoulder any heavy burdens. Tae-san clears his throat, interrupting the moment to announce that the Tail sect has officially decided to attend the Iron Sword Sect banquet. The little disciples continue to happily stuff their faces, while So-eun realizes the sect leader simply could not find a polite way to refuse the invitation. So-eun groans in frustration, desperately trying to think of a logical justification to stop them from attending the banquet. His father suddenly steps past him, declaring that he will represent the sect and attend the banquet all alone. So-eun looks up in surprise, watching his father walk away with a heavy and protective stance. A young disciple shyly approaches So-eun, holding a small wrapped package behind her back. With a blushing face, she presents a small serving of traditional rice cakes she saved just for him. Sarion and So-un gasp in shock, recognizing the wrapper as the exclusive treats handed out at the Gyeoryong banquet. The sweet girl explains that she held back from eating her favorite treat just so she could share it with Senior Jin when he finally returned. So-un is deeply touched, realizing the sweet girl kept the food safe for days just for his sake. Without a second thought, he takes a giant happy bite of the delicious rice cake. Sarion screams in comical shock, completely horrified that So-un would actually eat the little girl cherished treat. So-un happily chews, praising how amazingly delicious the cake is, while the poor girl looks on with a completely devastated face. With a bright apologetic smile, So-un quickly hands her his entire share of the fancy candies to make up for eating her cake. Sarion immediately begins chasing him around the yard, yelling at him for being such a greedy bully to the younger disciples. The other children happily share their snacks, noting that the Iron Sword sect will likely keep inviting and insulting them at every single future banquet. So-un watches them, his expression turning solemn. He realizes that if they keep hiding, his disciples will have to endure endless insults for the rest of their lives. He decides that letting his family and friends suffer under the bullies is simply not right. With a sharp and confident look, So-un declares that they will indeed go to the Iron Sword sect banquet, but this time on their own terms. The day of the grand celebration finally arrives, with a long line of carriage processions heading toward the massive gates of the Iron Sword sect. The Taeil sect delegation arrives at the busy gate, moving in a neat and orderly line. The massive, imposing wooden sign of the Iron Sword sect hangs high above the entrance, welcoming the prestigious guests. The burly hallmaster Kang Chae-suk sternly warns So-un to stay on his absolute best behavior and avoid causing any trouble. Chibi, So-un sweat drops, complaining that the hallmaster is focusing far too much on monitoring him instead of actually enjoying the party. The hallmaster rants at him, pointing out that So-un was the one who suddenly insisted on tagging along at the very last second. The other elders join in the nagging, complaining about the trouble So-un caused and teasingly asking if he is going through a late rebellious phase. In the front, Tae-san walks silently with a very heavy, tense posture, his true thoughts completely hidden. So-un notes that his father has been unusually quiet ever since they arrived at the hostile sect territory, his anxiety clearly showing. The hallmaster playfully pulls So-un's cheek, reminding him to swallow his pride even if the other sects try to throw insults at them. They prepare to walk up the grand steps, bracing themselves for the tense atmosphere ahead. Suddenly, an arrogant group of wealthy martial artists pushes right past them, aggressively demanding that they step aside. The haughty leader of the group barks at the guards, demanding to cut the line because his servant was supposedly waiting for him ahead. The Taeil Hall master angrily confronts them, calling out their utter shamelessness for trying to cut in front of everyone. The arrogant young master in white robes casually dismisses the complaint, claiming they are far too tired from their long journey to wait. He snaps open his fan, proudly introducing himself as Gu-young-sa of the incredibly wealthy Chungjuk firm. The other guests immediately begin to whisper in awe, recognizing the prestigious name of the powerful merchant group. The surrounding crowd quickly parts, offering polite apologies and eagerly letting the wealthy young master pass through first. So-un's eyes narrow with a cold and sharp focus as he recognizes the name of the Chungjuk firm. He remembers how in his past life, this arrogant kid became best friends with Gai Cheo-yong and helped him torment the Taeil disciples. Gu-young-sa treated their disciples like worthless personal servants, abusing his immense wealth to humiliate them at every turn. He recalled the rich kids laughing and mocking the Taeil sect, calling them a pathetic, nameless group that did not deserve their status. Back in the present, the snide remarks continue as the crowd whispers about how a failing sect like Taeil even managed to remain among the main peaks. So-un calmly reaches out and grabs Gu-young-sa firmly by the shoulder from behind, stopping him right in his tracks. With a mocking grin, So-un leans in close, playfully pretending to struggle with the pronunciation of the merchant group name. So-un speaks loudly for everyone to hear, casually stating that he has never heard of their firm and asking the arrogant boy to repeat it. Gu-young-sa freezes, his face twisting in absolute disbelief and rage at the public disrespect. The surrounding crowd gasps, totally shocked that a member of the Taeyil sect would dare to openly mock the wealthy merchant's son. With a hilarious and taunting face, So-un loudly wonders if he perhaps heard the prestigious name mentioned inside a public outhouse. Gu Yongsa completely loses his temper, his face contorting with pure and murderous rage. He reaches down to draw his sword, his hand trembling as he prepares to slice the arrogant kid apart. With a furious scream, he draws his blade, demanding to know how a mere peasant dares to insult his family honor. Suddenly, a clear and authoritative feminine voice cuts through the chaos, demanding to know what all the commotion is about. The crowd quickly parts as a majestic red-haired woman steps forward. The guards gasp, immediately recognizing her. She is Song Moran, famously known as the Wolf Mist Iron Sword and the granddaughter of the Iron Sword sect leader. She looks at the brawling guests with a deeply displeased and icy expression, demanding to know why they are starting fights here. Moran stands tall in her elegant robes, coldly asking if they really came to her grandfather's birthday celebration just to spill blood. We open on a grand shot of the Iron Sword sect, massive main gate, towering over the guests as they arrive for the grand celebration. A map of the region explains the fierce rivalry. Both the Taeyil sect and the Iron Sword sect operate out of the same city of Hefei, and under a single sky there can only be one dominant power. The Iron Sword sect had absolutely no intention of stopping its simple territory growth. They wanted to completely strip the Taeyil sect of its prestigious status and claim it for themselves. So-un recalls that in his original timeline, the Taeyil sect still reluctantly attended the Iron Sword sect leader's 60th birthday banquet. It was during that banquet youth gathering that So-un was goaded into a sparring match by the leader's arrogant grandson, Soung Mo-hyun. After So-un lost the fight, his father rushed in to stop the beatdown, kneeling in front of everyone and begging the Iron Sword sect leader for mercy. Back in the present, So-un stares ahead with a cold, serious glare. He knows that if he does not play his cards right, history is destined to repeat itself. Song Moran, the leader's granddaughter, steps forward with an authoritative frown, demanding to know the meaning of the loud disturbance at the gate. Gu Yongsa stands frozen, his drawn sword pointed at So-un as the powerful young lady questions if they came here just to start a brawl. Gu Yongsa's face turns bright red with embarrassment as he recognizes the famous beautiful wolf iron sword standing right in front of him. The arrogant merchant quickly sheaths his sword and stammers an awkward apology before quickly slinking back to the end of the line like everyone else. Moran gracefully introduces herself to the crowd, offering a polite apology on behalf of the Iron Sword sect for the embarrassing scene. As compensation for the trouble, she offers to personally escort the representatives of both the Taeyil sect and the Gyeoryong merchant group into the venue. She leads the group through the long stone corridor, her elegant robes flowing behind her as she walks. Gu Yongsa immediately tries to flirt with her, showering her with cheesy compliments and claiming the rumors of her beauty do not do her justice. Moran offers a polite, rehearsed smile, telling him he flatters her. She explains that the young sect leader is eagerly awaiting their arrival. So-un watches her from behind, deeply suspicious. In his previous life, Moran and the Taeyil sect never had any contact whatsoever, making him wonder if his actions have altered the timeline. He wonders if she is approaching them with some hidden and dangerous motive of her own. Clearly, this kind of sudden special treatment does not happen without a very specific reason, and he resolves to keep a very close eye on her. The group finally enters the grand and brightly lit banquet hall, which is already packed with powerful figures from across the region. At the high table, the white-haired bearded leader of the Iron Sword sect sits majestically, welcoming the VIPs. The Taeyil sect representatives bow politely, offering their formal greetings and noting that it has been a very long time since they last met. The young sect leader laughs loudly, telling the Gyeoryong merchant group leader to skip the stiff formalities since they are all old friends. The host continues to boast, claiming he still loses sleep over failing to recruit Guy's talented son to his own sect. He gloats that if not for the Taeyil sect unearned privileges as one of the 108 peaks, his own group would have taken the boy in without hesitation. Moran's grandfather gently tells the young leader he honors them too much before turning the attention to the representatives of the Taeyil sect. The massive white-bearded patriarch looks down at them with a deeply serious expression, finally acknowledging their presence. Kang Chae-seok and Jin Tae-san introduce themselves formally, while the patriarch notes that he recalls seeing the hallmaster at the alliance meetings. The old leader stares at So-eun's father, noting that it has already been 20 years since that fateful incident. So-eun's interest is completely piqued, wondering what exactly happened 20 years ago to make his father look so incredibly grim. The patriarch asks how the Taeyul sect leader has been faring, before rudely commenting on the meager state of the disciples they brought with them. Sereon and So-eun listen in silence as the host continues to mock their sect, claiming one cannot expect much when training under a third-rate group. The arrogant host laughs, telling the merchant to focus on pushing his son forward instead of wasting time with Taeyul useless techniques. He adds that teaching the boy Taeyul martial arts would be a complete and utter waste of time. He loudly declares that the boy would probably end up as nothing more than a pathetic third-rate martial artist, unleashing a booming laugh. Even the elder Namgung looks slightly uncomfortable with the host's incredibly hostile and public mockery. But So-eun is completely done playing nice, loudly commenting that every single word coming out of the host's mouth is unbelievably irritating. The host's laughter instantly vanishes, his face twisting in rage as he demands to know what nonsense the brat is spewing. So-eun offers a mocking lazy bow, sarcastically claiming he meant to keep the comment to himself, but it just slipped out. The elder quickly pulls So-eun back, desperately telling him to stay calm and ignore the deliberate provocation. So-eun sighs and agrees to play nice, but he firmly asks his father what exactly happened 20 years ago to make him look so incredibly worried. Tae-san remains completely silent, his eyes filled with a deep and unspoken pain. He lets out a heavy, tired sigh, completely unable to bring himself to speak about the past in this hostile place. Moran smoothly steps in to diffuse the rising tension, suggesting they move inside where she has reserved some of the best seats for them. Tae-san bows gratefully, quickly ushering the rest of the group to follow her and escape the awkward confrontation. She leads them to a beautiful and luxurious pagoda table overlooking a scenic lotus-filled pond. The table is loaded with incredibly rare and expensive delicacies that normal citizens could only dream of tasting. So-eun sits down next to Moran, directly asking why the hostile Iron Sword sect is treating them with such sudden kindness instead of ignoring them. Moran chuckles, explaining that the sect's strict rules do not allow women to get involved in important matters anyway, so she has plenty of free time. A visual profile introduces the two children of the young sect leader, the blood wolf, Song Mo-hyun, and the beautiful wolf, Song Moran. As the sole male heir, Mo-hyun monopolized almost all of the sect resources, being groomed from birth as the natural successor. Moran, on the other hand, started training incredibly late, yet her genius allowed her to enter the academy right alongside her favored brother. So-eun sips his drink, noting the rumors that the beautiful wolf fangs are actually much sharper than her brother. He warns her that her generosity might be a trap for his sect. Moran merely laughs behind her hand, thoroughly amused by the kid's sharp perception. Tae-san pours some tea, apologizing on behalf of his son's blunt behavior and desperately trying to keep the atmosphere polite. Moran smiles, teasingly suggesting that they could still hand Gai Cheol-yong over to their sect to settle the score, which Tae-san quickly laughs off as a joke. But So-eun stops eating, his expression turning cold as he directly asks Moran about her sect, true intentions. He demands to know why the powerful Iron Sword sect went out of their way to invite a failing group like them. Moran's playful expression turns into a sharp and subtle smile. She cryptically notes that banquets are only fun when many people gather, before adding that, throughout history, banquets have always been the perfect place for a quiet assassination. So-eun stares back at her, his mind racing as he tries to decipher the dark warning hidden behind her elegant smile. Moran's eye glints with a dangerous light. She softly comments that So-eun really is a fascinating person. She stands up to leave, claiming she would love to stay and chat, but her duties require her to move on. She offers a polite bow, bidding them a pleasant evening before stepping away from the table. She glides away gracefully, leaving the Taeyul representatives in deep thought. Sereon scoffs at the lady's dramatic exit, though So-eun remains focused on her parting words. Outside, the Grand Pagoda is beautifully lit by paper lanterns under the clear night sky. A group of young and wealthy martial artists quickly surround Moran, desperately trying to flirt with her. They loudly beg her to join their tables, showering her with praise and trying to show off their status. They call out to her eagerly, but Moran completely ignores them and continues walking. Her personal maid looks around frantically, shouting her name and warning her that the young master is desperately searching for her. Moran sits peacefully on the high roof of the pavilion, letting out a tired sigh. She complains that there is not a single real warrior among the entire crowd of guests. She recalls her brief conversation with Jin So-eun, finding his quiet confidence and sharp mind incredibly intriguing compared to the other fawning guests. She wonders if the boy is truly fearless or simply completely out of his mind. Her thoughts are interrupted as she hears a sudden noise from the courtyard below. She looks down to see Sereon and Gai Cheol, young, quietly sneaking away from the main banquet hall. She remembers her brother mentioning a separate and private gathering for the younger disciples to drink and test their skills. She notices that So-eun is not accompanying them, which immediately piques her curiosity. With a mischievous and sharp grin, she decides that this turn of events might actually be very entertaining. Meanwhile, back in his quiet guest quarters, So-eun hears a soft knock on his door and asks who is there. He slides the wooden door open, his eyes widening in complete shock at his unexpected visitor. Standing elegantly in the moonlit doorway is Song Moran, leaving So-eun completely speechless as he wonders what she could possibly want at this hour. As night falls, a sudden knock on the wooden door breaks the silence. So-eun slides the door open, calling out to ask who is there. He is completely caught off guard to find the beautiful granddaughter of the sect leader standing right on his doorstep. Moran stands elegantly in the moonlit doorway. So-eun, looking slightly flushed, asks what could possibly bring a lady of her status to his quarters at such a late hour. She politely explains that the Iron Sword sect has hosted a separate gathering for the younger generation to build camaraderie, and she thought it would be a great opportunity for So-eun to join. So-eun scratches his neck awkwardly, trying to decline by claiming that he and his fellow disciples are completely exhausted from the long and tiring journey. Moran smiles knowingly, asking if that is really the case for everyone in his group. She reveals that she just saw his pink-haired junior sister heading over to the gathering all by herself. In his previous life, So-eun accepted a duel at this very banquet and suffered a humiliating defeat, forcing his father to beg for mercy. He wanted to avoid this banquet to prevent that exact tragedy, but Moran news completely changes everything. He realizes he cannot leave Sereon alone in a hostile environment where the Iron Sword sect might have set a dangerous trap. Moran's eyes narrow as she asks if he is seriously implying that her honorable sect would invite guests just to set them up. She questions if he genuinely has no clue about the political reality, or if he is just playing dumb. She accuses him of acting like a coward with a massive inferiority complex toward her family's prestigious sect. So-eun looks at her silently, realizing that despite her high status, she has absolutely no idea what her own grandfather and brother are plotting behind the scenes. He admits the Taeil sect is a thorn in their side, but he knows the Iron Sword sect leaders are far more ruthless than she believes. Moran proudly defends her family, insisting the Iron Sword sect does not behave like a bunch of common street thugs. With a dark and confident grin, So-eun offers to make a very specific prediction about the events of the evening. He warns her that her brother Seong Mo-hyun will seize any chance to publicly humiliate and crush the Taeil sect reputation. He explains that even if he tries to play nice and withdraw, the bullies will eventually find a way to make his sect the laughingstock of the night. Moran looks deeply offended, calling him a paranoid madman who is simply convinced the entire world is out to get him. She angrily turns her back and walks away, leaving So-eun to prepare for the inevitable confrontation. We cut to the grand and brightly lit pavilion where the younger disciples have gathered for their private banquet. Inside, the atmosphere is incredibly hostile as the wealthy disciples openly mock the fading prestige of the Taeil sect. An arrogant young swordsman sneers, questioning how a third-rate group like Taeil still manages to hold a seat among the 1-8 main peaks while their own respectable sect is ignored. He continues to mock them, calling the wealthy Jirong merchant group pathetic for chaining themselves to a failing sect just for a special admission privilege. The other guests snicker and whisper, mocking Sereon for remaining completely silent in the face of their insults. They claim she simply has nothing to say because every single insult they threw is the absolute truth. The arrogant speaker raises his glass, mockingly suggesting they should hear the Taeyil sect official stance directly since Senior Jin is not here to save her. Saryeon sits frozen in pure rage, her fists clenching as the bully continues to push her. With a creepy mocking grin, the swordsman declares that stagnant and corrupt water must be cleared away for the greater good of the martial world. Sweat dripping down her face, Saryeon desperately tries to hold her ground, stammering that she is the one who came to answer. Clutching her dress in frustration, she is forced to weakly agree with his harsh view just to avoid starting a massive fight. But before the bullies can celebrate, So-un suddenly slides the door open, making a very dramatic entrance that stuns the entire room. Moran walks in right behind him, her presence immediately drawing the attention of all the young master guests. Gu Yongsa quickly stands up, offering his seat and begging the beautiful young lady to join them. Moran politely declines, stating she only came to escort a guest. Gu Yongsa's face twists with rage as he spots So-un, demanding to know how a mere peasant ended up walking in with the sect leader granddaughter. So-un completely ignores him, casually asking the staff to set up another table for drinks, which only infuriates the merchant even further. Gu Yongsa rants at the crowd, calling So-un a worthless senior brother who just sits there sipping wine while his junior sister is publicly insulted. Saryeon stands up in a panic, yelling at Gu Yongsa to knock it off before asking So-un why on earth he decided to show up. So-un gives her an innocent teasing look, claiming he only came because he was worried she would cause a massive disaster without him. Saryeon looks deeply annoyed, but So-un's attention has already shifted to the two most powerful figures in the room. He notices that the two top geniuses of the banquet haven't spared so much as a single glance toward the brawling disciples. The first is Namgung-san, the famous awakened divine dragon and the eldest son of the prestigious Namgung family, quietly sipping his tea. Sitting right beside him is the red-haired blood wolf Song Mo-hyeon, drinking arrogantly from his cup. Mo-hyeon looks up with a cold, piercing glare, his eyes locked onto So-un. With a patronizing smirk, Mo-hyeon asks if So-un barged into their conversation because he plans to take his junior sister place in the discussion. The other bully smiles, raising his cup as they prepare to tear the arrogant Taeyil disciple apart. So-un remains completely calm, staring back at them with a blank and unbothered expression. He reaches out and grabs a giant roasted chicken leg, casually agreeing with their view about stagnant water needing to be cleared. The bully continues his grand speech, claiming a pond only stays clear if fresh, clean water continually flows in. So-un takes a massive, messy bite of the chicken, completely ruining the serious, dramatic atmosphere of the speech. Chewing loudly, So-un suggests they take the Cheongjuk Fortress as a great example of clean water and rising power. He points out that because the previous fortress master tried to cover up their internal corruption, things ended in absolute disaster. The room goes completely silent as So-un recalls how the brothers of that very fortress drew their blades against each other in a bloody civil war. So-un pours himself a drink, mockingly adding that while the Cheongjuk Fortress is certainly strong, their history is incredibly messy. He asks the crowd if anyone would truly want to entrust their back to a group of people who are famous for backstabbing their own blood brothers. He slams his cup down hard on the table, stating that he would definitely prefer not to align with such corrupt people. With a wide and almost maniacal grin, So-un notes that the Murim alliance would naturally hesitate to accept such backstabbers as trustworthy allies. The surrounding disciples are left sweating in pure shock, terrified by the sheer audacity of bringing up Cheongjuk's darkest and most forbidden secret. Gu Yongsa completely snaps, grabbing So-un by the collar and shaking him in a furious rage. He screams at So-un, demanding to know how he dares to dig up the most disgraceful incident in their fortress history. So-un looks completely bored, pretending to be startled and claiming he was just agreeing with their logic. He looks directly into Gu Yongsa's eyes, reminding him that stagnant foul water must be cleared away, just like he said. Seong Mo-hyeon smiles coldly from the head of the table, stating that insulting their guests under his grandfather's roof is the same as spitting in his face. Moran quickly steps in to defend So-un, but her brother harshly tells her to stay out of the business. Saryeon panics, realizing that if So-yeon loses his temper, the entire sect will be ruined. She steps forward, bowing deeply and offering her formal apologies to the host. So, Un sighs, placing his hand on his knee as he prepares to de-escalate the situation. He bows formally, apologizing for ruining what should have been a very pleasant and enjoyable banquet. His sudden submissive apology leaves Moran looking completely stunned, having expected him to fight back. So, Un even offers a polite apology to Gu Yangsa, admitting he was out of line for bringing up their internal affairs. Mo Hyun looks down at them with a cold, satisfied glare, telling them to withdraw immediately and enjoy the rest of their night. So, Un ushers Sereon to leave, and she quickly nods, eager to get out of the hostile room. But as they turn to walk away, Mo Hyun's voice rings out, coldly commanding them to hold their steps. The Blood Wolf stands up, looking incredibly imposing as his eyes flash with a dangerous predatory light. He declares that letting a guest insult their allies without consequence would completely ruin the Iron Sword sect reputation. As the grandson of the sect leader, he insists he cannot simply let this slide with a few cheap, polite words. The other disciples smirk, realizing Mo Hyun has successfully trapped the Taeil representative. With a wild, crazed grin, Mo Hyun points a finger at So-won, formally demanding a sparring match to settle the score. Moran watches in deep frustration, realizing So-won's prediction has played out exactly as he said. With a chilling wide grin, So-won whispers that what is destined to happen will always find a way to happen. He looks back at the worried Moran, his smile confirming that everything is unfolding exactly according to his master plan. Song Mo Hyun bursts into a crazed, arrogant laugh. He formally challenges So-won to a sparring match, eager to teach the insolent kid a lesson. So-won smiles confidently beneath his mask. This is exactly what he planned for, and he is more than ready to step onto the stage. Back in his guest room, the elders are in a complete panic. They scream at him, demanding to know how he plans to handle the massive political fallout of fighting the host grandson. So-won calmly points out that if he had not intervened, the bullies would have targeted Sereon instead. He tells them they should be scolding Gai Keol, Young, for dragging her into such a hostile place to begin with. Sereon looks away in embarrassment, while the elders yell that he is still a reckless fool for accepting the challenge. So-won scratches his neck comically, trying to ease the tension. He tells Sereon she finally understands his logic, but she angrily shoots back that he still should have held back. She looks at him with a deeply worried expression, warning him that Mo Hyun is far stronger than any opponent he has faced before. She tells him he could genuinely end up dead. Sereon bites her lip, her eyes filled with tears of pure frustration and worry for her senior life. So-won waves his hands comically, desperately trying to stop her from crying. He assures her that he already has a solid plan to win, and she should start thinking about how to celebrate his victory instead. The Elder Hall Master screams at him, calling him an absolute idiot for cracking terrible jokes when he is just making the poor girl cry harder. Suddenly, So-won's father speaks up with a quiet and incredibly heavy voice, telling the elders to back off. Tai-san firmly tells the other hall masters that he will handle his son affairs on his own. He begs them to trust his judgment and watch how the events play out. With a heavy heart, the Elder Hall Master grumbles and walks out of the room, leaving the family alone. So-won watches his father walk away, his eyes narrowing as he senses a deep hidden sorrow in his father's posture. His father looks back, warning So-won to stay safe. So-won confidently reassures him, promising that everything is going to be completely fine. The next morning, the sun shines brightly over the massive headquarters of the Iron Sword sect, where the duel is set to take place. Sereon runs up to So-won in a massive panic, her face pale. So-won calmly asks his junior sister what has got her so incredibly worked up. She gasps for breath, desperately trying to tell him that his father is doing something terrible. So-won's eyes widen in shock as a sudden wave of dread washes over him. Without wasting a single second, he sprints toward the main training ground as fast as his legs can carry him. He realizes his worst fears have already come to pass. The hostile atmosphere he wanted to prevent has already formed at the arena. A massive crowd of onlookers has gathered around the courtyard, whispering about the arrogant Taeil disciple who dared to insult the host. The guests gossip, noting that the external hall leader of the Taeil sect is currently down in the dirt, begging for his son's life. So-won reaches the balcony, his eyes widening in pure horror as he looks down at the courtyard. At the VIP seats, the patriarch of the Iron Sword sect sits with a smug look, formally apologizing to the chief strategist of the Murim alliance for the messy scene. The strategist calmly waves it off, telling the host to go ahead and settle his internal family affairs. Juge So-myung, the chief strategist, watches the scene with a cold, analytical gaze, waiting to see how the conflict resolves. So-un realizes the Iron Sword sect is fully resolved to use this incident to completely ruin and banish the Taeyil sect. Down in the courtyard, Tae-san is kneeling with his forehead pressed hard against the stone tiles, begging the host to forgive his foolish son. The smug patriarch looks down at him, coldly demanding to hear exactly what death-worthy offense his son committed. Blood drips slowly from Tae-san's forehead onto the stone tiles. He weakly explains that his son uttered words that insulted their prestigious sect. The patriarch laughs mockingly, commenting that the scene brings back memories. He notes that 20 years ago, Tae-san did the exact same thing. So-un's voice suddenly rings out like thunder, demanding to know what they think they are doing right now. He walks down the steps with a cold, terrifying aura, the crowd turning to look at him in absolute shock. Tae-san tells him to stay back, but So-un firmly tells his father to stand up. He asks what kind of father could calmly watch his son be beaten, and what child could watch his father be humiliated like this. Tae-san looks up in defeat, his pride completely shattered as his son witnesses his deepest shame. With a cold, commanding tone, So-un tells his father to step back and let him handle the fight. Tae-san's fist trembles on the floor, but he slowly stands up, realizing his son is no longer a child who needs protection. Shong Mo-hyun smiles viciously, mockingly praising their touching fatherly devotion. He claims he will graciously overlook the insult in honor of the father's sincerity, demanding that So-un kneel down beside him right now. Instead of kneeling, So-un slowly reaches down and grips his sword hilt, preparing to draw his blade. He draws his sword with a sharp ring, pointing it directly at Mo-hyun's face. He calmly tells his father that the moment his blade left its sheath, the matter was no longer up for negotiation. Tae-san looks at him in despair, warning him that drawing his sword here means there is absolutely no turning back. So-un looks back with a reassuring smile. He tells his father that he simply wants to prove to everyone that he is not a coward who makes empty promises. The elders watch from the steps, calling So-un a foolish boy for throwing away his last chance to escape. Tae-san stands back, his eyes filled with worry, but also a tiny spark of hope. So-un tells him to watch closely, promising that he will not let his family name be dragged through the dirt today. Under the clear blue sky, the ultimate clash between the two rival disciples is about to begin. Mo-hyun slowly draws his massive heavy blade, pointing it at So-un with a confident, arrogant gesture. The crowd watches in absolute silence as the two warriors face off in the center of the vast training ground. So-un knows that Mo-hyun grew up with the best training and resources his sect could offer, making him a formidable opponent. However, he also knows the weakness of the Iron Sword style. Their massive blades are heavy, which makes them highly vulnerable to the lightning-fast speed of the Taeyil style. He decides to overwhelm his opponent with pure speed, lunging forward with the first basic form of the Soshan sword art. Mo-hyun's eyes widen slightly in surprise as So-un blade closes the distance in the blink of an eye. Mo-hyun tightly grips his massive sword, mocking So-un for scurrying around like a little rat. He swings his heavy blade with immense force, easily deflecting So-un's rapid strikes and pushing him back. The raw power of his swing generates a sharp gust of wind that slices through the air. Mo-hyun's blade slams into the stone ground, completely shattering the tiles and creating a massive cloud of dust. Juge So-myung watches from the pavilion, noting that the Iron Sword sect is undeniably powerful. He scoffs at the Taeyil sect, claiming the rumors of their worthlessness are true. Mo-hyun smirks at the struggling So-un, mockingly asking if that weak flurry of attacks is really all he has got. So-un pants heavily, wiping a sweat drop from his chin as he recovers his stance. With a cold glare, So-un tells the arrogant bully to shut his mouth, preparing his next strike. He lunges forward again, the clash of their blades creating a shower of sparks that lights up the arena. A continuous and rapid exchange of strikes echoes through the courtyard as So-un struggles to bypass the heavy defense. He grits his teeth, sweating profusely as he realizes Mo-hyun's physical strength is incredibly high. Mo-hyun grins maniacally, leaning in close as their swords lock. He comments that 20 years ago, another arrogant fool from a nameless sect did the exact same thing. He boasts that the foolish challenger naturally lost the fight against his father and had to pay a horrific price for his disrespect. He reveals that they heated a metal blade until it glowed red hot, using it to brutally torture the defeated warrior. They seared his entire back, chest, and abdomen with brutal burn marks, leaving him permanently scarred. With a sick, twisted smile, Mo Hyun reveals that the tortured man name was Jin Tai-san of the T-Yul sect. Hearing the horrific truth about his father's scars, So-Yoon's eyes widen in pure, unadulterated horror. Completely distracted by the shocking revelation, So-Yoon's guard drops for a fraction of a second. He looks over at his father in disbelief, his mind completely reeling. Mo Hyun immediately takes advantage of the opening, landing a brutal kick straight to So-Yoon's ribs. The powerful strike sends So-Yoon flying backward across the courtyard, crashing heavily into the stone tiles. Tai-san and Saryeon scream in absolute horror, watching So-Yoon lie motionless on the ground. The arrogant crowd laughs, mocking the Taeyol sect and claiming they should have known their place. So-Yoon slowly pushes himself up, his eyes shadowed as the painful memory of his family past suffering fuels his rage. He stands tall, a terrifying aura beginning to emanate from his body. He realizes some things are simply destined to be settled with blood. With an insane, chilling laugh, So-Yoon looks up at his opponent, his eyes glowing with pure malice. He is ready to unleash his true power. With a furious roar, Mo Hyun swings his heavy sword again, but So-Yoon's blade intercepts it, sending a powerful shockwave echoing through the training ground. Mo Hyun is left struggling against the incredible crushing force of the clash. He stammers in panic, completely unable to comprehend how So-Yoon's physical strength suddenly multiplied. In his mind, a vision of the legendary archives flashes as So-Yoon fully unleashes the true high-tier forms of the Lesser Heaven Sword technique. Terrified and sweating profusely, the bully screams, demanding to know what kind of underhanded trick So-Yoon is using to overwhelm him. But So-Yoon does not offer a single word, his eyes glowing with a cold, predatory blue light as his blade cuts through the air like a streak of lightning. The visual representation of the legendary Lesser Heaven Sword technique shows a storm of overlapping slashes. So-Yoon's movements have become completely invisible to the naked eye. A series of continuous lightning-fast cuts slices clean through Mo Hyun's heavy defenses. The arrogant bully is left wide open, gasping in shock as blood splatters across the arena. Mo Hyun's eyes glaze over in complete defeat, his body trembling as his cocky attitude is thoroughly crushed. He falls heavily onto his hands and knees, coughing up a mouthful of blood as his massive sword clatters uselessly against the stone tiles. So-Yoon stands triumphantly over his defeated opponent, his sword resting calmly at his side. He coldly asks if this pathetic showing is really the absolute best the mighty Iron Sword sect has to offer. We return to the climax of the fight as So-Yoon Soshon, sword art completely overwhelms Mo Hyun. The sheer speed of his blade creates a storm of white light. Mo Hyun is left sweating and bleeding profusely, his body desperately straining to keep up with the lightning-fast strikes. So-Yoon's expression is cold and completely focused as he easily parries every single desperate counterattack. With a choked scream, the defeated genius is driven back, his heavy blade barely keeping him upright as he collapses to his knees. His face contorted in sheer horror, Mo Hyun stares up at his opponent, unable to accept that he has been completely outclassed. With a furious roar, Mo Hyun stands up, accusing So-Yoon of relying on cheap, underhanded tricks to steal his victory. Desperate to save face, Mo Hyun channels all his remaining energy into his family signature mountain-shattering sword technique, launching a final devastating attack. The massive clash of their blades generates a colossal explosion, sending a thick cloud of dust and debris flying through the air. The spectators shelter their eyes in a panic, unable to see through the thick dust storm and wondering if Mo Hyun is genuinely trying to murder the kid. Inside the cloud of dust, the loud clashing of their blades continues to echo through the courtyard. Mo Hyun lunges through the smoke, calling So-Yoon an insignificant insect, and swinging his heavy blade with pure blind fury. But So-Yoon easily slides past the wild strike, his movements perfectly calculated as they trade blows at extreme speeds. Mo Hyun's hands begin to tremble, his wrists screaming in pain from the continuous heavy impacts. So-Yoon remains completely calm, his eyes easily tracking Mo Hyun's clumsy, desperate movements through the dust. The continuous clashing of their swords rings out like thunder, neither warrior giving an inch as they struggle for dominance. Watching from the balcony, the white-bearded patriarch of the Iron Sword sect looks on in absolute disbelief. He realizes So-un's sword work is far sharper than anything he expected. Chief strategist Juga So-myung watches with a serious look, noting that the combat experience of the Taeil disciple is simply astronomical compared to his young opponent. The surrounding guests whisper in denial, claiming the fight makes no sense, and accusing So-un of using the dust to confuse their beloved young master. So-un smiles bitterly beneath his mask, reflecting on the lingering, twisted grudge that is carried over from his past life. He knows that even if he wins this duel, it will not be enough to completely sever the tragic cycle of fate between their sects. Mo Hyun leaps forward for one final desperate lunge, screaming that So-un fluke-like luck ends right here. But So-un easily sidesteps the attack, moving like a ghost as he prepares his decisive counter. With a swift, precise stroke, So-un delivers a heavy blow that shatters Mo Hyun's stance. Moran and Guyang-sa watch in frozen horror as they realize the battle has officially reached its end. Mo Hyun stares in shock as his heavy sword is knocked clean out of his hands, flying high into the air. He is left completely defenseless, staring at his empty palms in sheer disbelief. So-un stands tall, his sword pointing down as he coldly tells the defeated bully to watch closely. He promises that after today, the Iron Sword sect will never look down on them again. Mo Hyun falls heavily onto his knees in the dirt, his pride completely shattered as his weapon clatters to the ground. Standing triumphantly, So-un declares that the Iron Sword sect will be crushed beneath the Taeil sect feet for all time. The host guests are left utterly speechless, their faces pale as they witness the historic defeat of their star disciple. Mo Hyun stares blankly at the stone tiles, his eyes wide with a mix of dread, shock, and humiliation. So-un looks down at him coldly, offering absolutely no pity to the bully who once tormented his family. The massive iron sword remains stuck firmly in the ground, vibrating as a symbol of their broken pride. Mo Hyun kneels in silence, his mind struggling to process the reality of his massive defeat. He looks down at his trembling hands, his mind screaming in denial as he realizes he was completely outclassed. His mind goes completely crazy. He cannot accept that the famous Bloodwolf was just disarmed by a disciple from a third-rate sect. With a furious scream, Mo Hyun lunges blindly at So-un, completely refusing to let the match end like this. So-un easily evades the desperate attack, stepping aside with a calm and fluid movement. With a swift sweep of his foot, So-un knocks Mo Hyun flat on his back, leaving him sprawling in the dirt once more. Mo Hyun coughs heavily, his body completely broken as he stares up at the sky in defeat. Watching his grandson get utterly humiliated, the old patriarch face turns incredibly dark and grim. So-un stands over him, while Mo Hyun shakily tries to push himself off the ground. The defeated boy screams in denial, refusing to accept that his techniques are completely useless against So-un. He swings his sword wildly, but So-un effortlessly dodges the slow, clumsy strike. As they clash, Mo Hyun realizes something is terribly wrong. His internal energy feels like it is completely cutting out. He stares at his shaking hands in terror, realizing he can no longer execute his martial arts properly. He is left completely paralyzed, his internal energy reserves feeling entirely drained. He looks up to see So-un surrounded by a faint dark green aura. Mo Hyun stammers in panic, wondering what kind of demonic technique is draining his power. So-un looks down at him, coldly noting that his opponent's internal energy cultivation is laughably lacking. Mo Hyun's face twists with rage. He cannot accept that after consuming countless expensive elixirs, he is being completely overwhelmed in a contest of raw internal power. He stands shakily, his grip on his sword failing as his body grows weaker by the second. He lunges one last time, but So-un easily sidesteps the incredibly slow and heavy strike. With a look of pure terror, Mo Hyun realizes that his energy has been draining ever since So-un first laid a hand on his shoulder at the gate. A visual representation shows Mo Hyun's vital ki being siphoned away by the dark power of the Azure Dragon Ring. Pointing a trembling finger at So-un, Mo Hyun screams in absolute terror, accusing him of using forbidden sorcery. He frantically calls out to the guards, claiming, So-un is a spy from the demonic cult who must be executed immediately for using a forbidden art. Suddenly, the old patriarch voice booms across the courtyard, commanding everyone to be quiet. The patriarch steps forward, his eyes locked onto So-un as he demands that his grandson shut his mouth. But Mo-hyun continues to grovel, desperately begging his grandfather to believe him and claiming he felt his energy being drained. So-un maintains a completely calm, deadpan expression, unfazed by the dangerous accusation. Mo-hyun screams hysterically, claiming the Taeil disciple has mastered the forbidden evil, heaven-devouring art. The entire crowd erupts into an uproar, gossiping about the legendary forbidden technique that absorbs an opponent's vital energy. Juga So-myung watches the chaotic scene from above, his expression turning deeply analytical. He notes that accusing someone of practicing a forbidden art is a very serious matter that should not be tossed around lightly. If the accusation is proven true, the Murim alliance will completely wipe out the entire Taeil sect. The strategist realizes the host patriarch is deeply torn. If he supports his grandson's wild excuse, he risks looking incredibly pathetic to the alliance. So-un looks down at the groveling Mo-hyun, calling his desperate excuses beyond pathetic. He reminds the crowd that he tried to stay calm and even apologized, but the Iron Sword sect insisted on this duel just to humiliate them. He exposes Mo-hyun's true intent, explaining that the bully only wanted to prove their superiority to steal Taeil's main peak status. He notes that even though he agreed to a fair duel of skill, the moment Mo-hyun faced defeat, he resorted to crying sorcery to save his pride. Moran looks on in deep worry, realizing her brother's petty behavior is about to bring ruin to their family reputation. So-un scoffs, stating that a sect as small-minded and petty as the Iron Sword sect has absolutely no right to join the 1-on-8 main peaks. The host patriarch smiles deviously, deciding that letting the conflict play out a bit longer might serve his interests. The spectators begin to turn on the hosts, gossiping that the Iron Sword sect is merely acting out of jealousy and trying to frame an innocent rival. Realizing his family name is being dragged through the mud, Mo-hyun face twists with pure, desperate rage. He bangs his fist hard on the stone tiles, begging his grandfather to believe his oath as the Blood Wolf. He screams that since he has never lost to anyone his age, there is absolutely no way he could lose to a Taeil disciple unless sorcery was involved. He swears that he clearly felt his vital ki being siphoned away during their clash, offering to accept any punishment if he is lying. With veins popping on his forehead, Mo-hyun desperately begs his grandfather to inspect So-un's body for traces of the forbidden technique. The old patriarch lets out a long, heavy sigh, realizing he has to take control of the situation. He steps forward, raising his hand to officially call the sparring match to a permanent halt. So-un looks at him with a cold glare, demanding to know on what grounds they are stopping, a duel whose outcome was already decided. The patriarch glares back, firmly stating that they cannot ignore a formal suspicion of sorcery and must inspect So-un's body immediately. Mo-hyun looks on with a sweaty, desperate grin, hoping his grandfather's authority will finally crush the annoying kid. The patriarch yells in a booming voice, commanding everyone to be quiet and demanding to inspect So-un's meridians on the spot. He warns them that if they refuse the inspection, he will hold the entire Taeil sect fully accountable for harboring a demonic practitioner. Suddenly, Jin Tae-san screams out in a desperate voice, stepping in front of his son to shield him. With tears in his eyes, Tae-san begs the host to spare his son, offering to take full responsibility for any perceived offense. To protect his son from the dangerous inspection, Tae-san draws his own sword, preparing to offer his life on the spot to settle the score. He turns to So-un with a desperate pleading look, begging his son to forgive his weakness. He commands the other hallmaster to ensure that if he dies, his body remains untouched until the Murim Alliance representatives arrive. So-un watches in absolute shock as his father prepares to commit suicide to save him from the false accusations. Before Tae-san can strike himself, So-un's hand moves like lightning, grabbing the blade firmly with his bare hand to stop the blow. Bleeding from his palm, So-un looks up with a cold, terrifying gaze, declaring that he is prepared to die to defend their honor. He formally challenges the Iron Sword sect leader to step forward and face him instead. So-un firmly grabs his father's sword hand, preventing him from committing suicide. He declares that he is fully prepared to risk his own life to defend their family honor. With blood dripping from his palm, So-un formally challenges the leader of the Iron Sword sect to step forward. The junior disciples watch in absolute shock, terrified by the sheer audacity of a disciple challenging the leader of a major sect. The patriarch of the Iron Sword sect looks on with a furious expression, deeply insulted by the kid's total lack of respect. With a thunderous roar, the patriarch unleashes a massive shockwave of internal energy, demanding to know how a mere brat dares to raise his voice in his presence. The force of the blast is so immense that it pushes the surrounding disciples back, leaving them struggling to stand. Tae-san quickly steps forward to support his son, shouting out in alarm as the situation escalates out of control. So-un remains completely undeterred, his eyes locked onto the hostile patriarch as he prepares to stand his ground. Tae-san frantically tries to pull him back, yelling that no father in this world would ever send his own son to die first. The patriarch lunges forward with a crazed, murderous expression, promising to personally end the Taeil sect legacy right here. The surrounding guests watch in absolute terror, genuinely believing they are about to witness a brutal public execution. But a cold, authoritative voice suddenly rings out, commanding both parties to halt immediately. Juka So-myung, the chief strategist of the Murim alliance, steps directly between them, ordering everyone to sheathe their weapons. His calm, commanding presence instantly silences the chaotic courtyard. The patriarch reluctantly stops his lunge, muttering the strategist's name in surprise. The strategist turns his gaze towards So-un, firmly ordering the young disciple to lower his blade as well. So-un refuses to back down, boldly stating that he cannot sheathe his sword until justice is served. The patriarch screams in rage, calling So-un an insolent wretch for daring to defy the direct order of the alliance chief strategist. The strategist calmly asks So-un for his reasoning, finally acknowledging that the Iron Sword sect used the duel as a pretext to humiliate his family. The patriarch watches in silence as the strategist admits that the accusation of sorcery was handled with extreme bias. So-un directly questions the strategist in action, asking why the leader of the alliance stood by and watched the injustice unfold before finally stepping in. The strategist chuckles at the bold words, praising the boy's immense courage. He notes that, as the chief strategist, his words carry the full authority of the Murim alliance. However, he honestly admits that he was watching the impressive duel too closely to intervene any sooner. He looks at the young disciple, asking what exactly he wants to achieve by continuing this dangerous confrontation. So-un points his blade directly at the patriarch, his gaze cold and absolutely unwavering. He boldly declares that what he wants is the head of the Iron Sword sect leader. The strategist's eyes narrow slightly, thoroughly impressed by the boy's remarkably daring and calculated move. He realizes So-un is completely willing to act as a martyr. If he dies in a duel, the Iron Sword sect will be permanently branded as dishonorably slaughtering a defenseless boy to hide their own lies. With an amused smile, Juge So-myung notes that this turn of events has become incredibly interesting. He turns to the patriarch, asking how confident he is in his grandson's accusations, and if he is prepared to stake his entire sect name on a duel to the death. The patriarch sweat drops, nervously claiming that rooting out sorcery is a simple duty, trying to avoid wagering his own life. But So-un father steps forward, declaring that if they insist on a duel, he will gladly fight the patriarch himself. The strategist smiles, raising his hand and suggesting a much more interesting wager to settle the dispute. The patriarch watches in silent anger as the strategist prepares to raise the stakes of the conflict. The strategist suggests that the patriarch should wager his sect's most sacred treasure, the legendary nine-fold sword. This ancestral weapon is the ultimate symbol of the Iron Sword sect, passed down through generations of leaders. So-un is shocked by the strategist's bold provocation. The patriarch panics, frantically arguing that he never agreed to wager their most sacred relic just for a simple sparring match. The strategist coldly notes that if the patriarch is so highly confident in his grandson's claims, he should not hesitate to let him examine the boy Dantian directly. The surrounding guests begin to whisper, agreeing that the Iron Sword sect's refusal to cooperate makes them look incredibly suspicious and corrupt. The patriarch realizes his reputation is completely ruined if he continues to refuse the Alliance direct inspection. Left with absolutely no other choice, the defeated patriarch grinds his teeth and agrees to the strategist's terms. He reluctantly lowers his head, admitting defeat in the political arena. The strategist turns to So-un, asking if he is satisfied with this arrangement as well. So-un calmly sheaths his sword, his expression neutral as he prepares for the inspection. The strategist steps down, gently telling the young disciple to relax his body and avoid resisting his internal chi. He places his hand firmly on So-un's forearm, channeling a glowing blue stream of energy to examine his meridians. The entire courtyard holds its collective breath as the Alliance chief strategist carefully inspects the boy's internal structure. In Mo-hyun's mind, he is absolutely certain So-un used the heaven-devouring art, expecting the strategist to find multiple conflicting key signatures in his dantian. But the pure, refined flow of So-un's internal energy shows absolutely no signs of the chaotic stolen key. The strategist grips his wrist tighter, thoroughly checking every single corner of his energy core. Jugaso. Myung's eyes stretch wide in pure shock as he finishes the inspection. The spectators watch anxiously, waiting for the final verdict that will decide the Taeyil sect fate. The strategist slowly pulls his hand back, formally declaring that So-un has absolutely no traces of the heaven-devouring art in his body. The patriarch is left completely stunned, his face turning pale as his grandson's lie is publicly exposed. Mo-hyun screams hysterically, begging his grandfather to believe him and claiming the kid must have used some advanced trick to hide it. The patriarch's face twists with rage. He refuses to accept that his grandson lost a fair fight, declaring he must confirm the results himself. In a fit of pure blind fury, the old man lunges directly at the defenseless So-un, ignoring the strategist's presence entirely. He slams his glowing palm directly into So-un's chest, unleashing a brutal electric blast of raw internal energy. So-un gasps in agony as the devastating attack tears through his chest, while his father screams in absolute horror. So-un spits a massive spray of blood as he is blasted backward across the courtyard, his body completely broken. Moran screams in terror, realizing her grandfather has completely lost his mind and is trying to murder the kid. So-un collapses heavily onto the stone tiles, blood pooling around his head as his breathing grows dangerously shallow. Sereon and Tae-san rush to his side in a panic, desperately crying out his name as they try to stabilize him. The chief strategist looks down with a deeply displeased, icy expression, demanding to know what the patriarch thinks he is doing. Realizing the gravity of his mistake in front of the Alliance representative, the old man's face turns pale as he sweat drops in panic. So-un barely opens his eyes, weakly staring up at the hostile leaders who tried to completely destroy his family. Coughing up more blood, So-un demands that the patriarch apologize for his contemptible, cowardly actions. The young disciples watch in absolute shock, their hearts breaking for the brave junior brother who stood up to the bullies. With a trembling, bloody hand, So-un points at the patriarch, declaring that his family must pay the ultimate price for their sins. He glares at them with pure, unyielding defiance, completely refusing to let them escape the consequences of their actions. With his final bit of strength spent, So-un's hand falls limp as his body collapses into unconsciousness. Tae-san holds his unconscious son tightly, weeping in pure agony as Sereon screams in horror. Saryon continues to weep, while the strategist coldly tells the patriarch that he must honor his promise to the Alliance. The old man is left staring in silence, knowing his family reputation is officially ruined for all time. The morning sun shines peacefully over the quiet pavilion, a stark contrast to the chaotic battle of the previous night. So-un slowly opens his eyes, letting out a soft groan as he wakes up in a warm, comfortable bed. He looks around in confusion, his brain slowly remembering the events of the duel. Sereon sits quietly by his bedside, her face lighting up with a gentle smile as she notices he is finally awake. She gently places her hand on a thick book, welcoming him back and preparing to explain what happened while he was asleep. Inside a dark, damp dungeon, a small rat scurries across the stone floor, the squeaking sound echoing through the cold cells. Mo-hyun is locked tightly inside a heavy iron cage, his voice echoing in a desperate, pleading scream. He grips the iron bars, frantically begging his grandfather to believe his claims and insisting that So-un definitely used forbidden demonic magic during their duel. The patriarch of the Iron Sword sect slowly walks up to the cage, looking down at his grandson with a cold, disgusted expression. He tells him he still has not come to his senses. He demands to know if the boy has any idea how much prestige and power their sect has lost because of his pathetic failure. He laments his original plan to pass the leadership down to such an absolute idiot. With a final icy glare, the patriarch commands that until the boy has properly reflected on his disgraceful defeat, he is not to be given a single drop of water. Left alone in the dark, Mo Hien screams out for his grandfather in pure, helpless despair. Meanwhile, back in the quiet guest pavilion, a voice calmly asks if the elaborate little performance is finally over. So, Un sits up in his bed, totally surprised to find Chief Strategist Zhuge So-myung sitting comfortably at his table. So, Un tries to play dumb, nervously asking what the strategist could possibly mean by calling his ordeal a performance. So, Un sweat drops comically, realizing that the leader of the Murim alliance is far too sharp to be fooled by basic half-hearted excuses. The strategist closes his book, calling So-un a genius, beyond all geniuses, and suggesting they stop wasting time on useless lies. He acknowledges the strategist's incredible legendary status as the chief mind of the Murim alliance, a man who sees through everything. A series of quick flashbacks show the key moments of the battle, proving the strategist has already connected all the dots. So-un realizes the strategist knew about his plans from the very beginning, and the strategist calmly confirms his suspicions. The strategist explains how So-un deliberately set up the duel to completely corner the Iron Sword sect. He reveals that even the blood on So-un's face was a highly calculated move, noting that So-un deliberately bit his own cheek to fake a severe injury. Zhuge So-myung leans forward, directly asking the young disciple when he first started planning this incredibly elaborate setup. The two sit across from each other by the circular window, the atmosphere incredibly tense as they negotiate. So-un remains silent for a moment, sweating nervously under the strategist's sharp gaze. The strategist pours some tea, teasingly asking if the boy has suddenly forgotten how to speak now that his secrets have been exposed. So-un casually steps out of bed, immediately changing the subject to ask about his promised reward. He points to the massive black-wrapped sword leaning against the wall, asking if that is indeed the legendary nine-fold sword he won. With a sudden comical burst of pure greed, So-un gasps in excitement, absolutely eager to inspect the priceless ancestral weapon. The strategist's jaw comically drops in shock. He cannot believe the kid has the audacity to ignore his questions just to drool over the prize. So-un eagerly examines the heavy sword, excitedly wondering how much money he could get if he sold the sect's most sacred treasure at a local market stall. The strategist grumbles about So-un being an incredibly disrespectful brat before demanding that he finally answer his questions. So-un explains that his plan simply started when the hostile Iron Sword sect invited them to the banquet, a move that made their malicious intent incredibly obvious. He explains that because of his memories, he knew the bullies would try to cause trouble, so he prepared a trap to crush them so thoroughly they would never dare to threaten his family again. The strategist looks at him with a serious expression, asking if he actually anticipated that Mo Hien would resort to accusing him of practicing a forbidden technique. He asks how So-un managed to provoke his opponent so precisely during the heat of battle. So-un cheekily tells him that answering any further questions is going to cost him a fee. He points out that the strategist only helped him secure the sword, so they are already even on favors. The strategist scoffs, noting that powerful warriors wait for days with chests of gold just for a brief chat with him, yet this kid acts like he has nothing to gain. So-un offers a cheerful, cheeky bow, telling him that if the interview is over, he will gladly take his leave. He happily waves goodbye, leaving the strategist completely flabbergasted by his relaxed attitude. The strategist sighs and plops a small chest onto the table, offering a new bribe in exchange for the explanation. With a satisfied grin, So-un agrees to explain how he successfully predicted the forbidden technique accusation. He explains that there is nothing mysterious about it. He simply used Mo Hien's immense arrogance against him, knowing the bully's fragile ego would never allow him to accept a fair defeat. He notes that even if he used a similar-looking technique, the bully panic would make him immediately jump to the absolute worst possible conclusion to save face. He secretly gloats that thanks to his unique ring filtering the absorbed energy, even a master like Juga So-myung could not find a single trace of demonic chi in his body. With a look of anticipation, So-un opens the small chest to finally claim his new reward. His eyes widen in pure shock as he finds 3 glowing purple spiritual pills. He gasps, realizing they are the legendary Iron Heart pills of the Iron Sword sect. He happily cradles the chest, thanking the host in his head for such an incredibly generous and valuable gift. The strategist stands up to depart, but he asks one final serious question. He wants to know why So-un didn't just win the duel cleanly if he was so confident. So-un explains that a clean win would have been dismissed as a lucky fluke. He wanted to push the hosts to the absolute limit so their corruption would be fully exposed to the entire alliance. The strategist asks what would have happened if his plan failed and they executed him. So-un calmly notes that an inspection of his corpse would have eventually proven his innocence anyway. In that scenario, his death would have cleared the Taeil sect name and preserved their honor for all time. Juga So-myung stares at him in disbelief, asking if he was genuinely prepared to throw away his life for something so trivial. So-un clenches his fist tightly, a cold, intense fury radiating from his body. He looks the strategist dead in the eye, asking him if he seriously just used the word trivial to describe his family honor. The two stand in a tense, silent standoff, the atmosphere in the pavilion turning icy. So-un firmly states that even a small struggling sect like Taeil has a legacy and honor that absolutely deserves to be defended, regardless of the cost. The strategist's eyes widen slightly, completely caught off guard by the sheer weight of the young disciple's raw resolve. Suddenly, the strategist bursts into loud, hearty laughter, thoroughly impressed. He declares, So-un is a truly fascinating youth, and taking his side was definitely the right choice. So-un sweat drops comically at the old man, sudden burst of laughter, wondering if the strategist is slightly out of his mind. Juga So-myung pulls out another glowing, exquisite token, stating that a young warrior who amuses him this much deserves an extra reward. So-un takes the heavy wooden token, looking at it in complete confusion. His eyes widen in shock as he reads the engravings on the surface. It is a prestigious academy admission token, allowing one disciple to enter the Murim Academy directly without taking the brutal exams. The strategist smiles, explaining the immense value of the rare prize. So-un is deeply moved, realizing he can now secure a second slot for their sect disciples. The strategist adds that once So-un graduates, he should come work at his office. So-un looks blankly at him, completely caught off guard by the job offer. He recalls that the Office of 10,000 Connections is notorious for brutal overtime and leaving its workers with absolutely no social lives. He looks sweatily horrified, his face turning blue as he desperately tries to decline the terrifying offer. The strategist merely laughs, climbing comically out the window to make his exit and telling So-yune he expects to see him very soon. The strategist's loud, cheerful laughter echoes through the night as he leaps away over the roofs. So-un screams after him in frustration, begging the old man to come back and use the door like a normal person. Juga So-myung vanishes into the night, leaving behind a very chaotic and exciting future for the young disciple. The next day, the sun shines over the peaceful, blossom-filled gardens of the Iron Sword sect. Moran walks quietly under the beautiful purple wisteria trees, her expression thoughtful and solemn. She stops by the pond, looking down with a deep, silent sigh as she reflects on the crazy events of the duel. She recalls her grandfather's terrifying rage and the brutal blast of energy he unleashed on the young disciple. She remembers So-un's bloody, broken body lying in the dirt, a vivid reminder of how incredibly close he came to death. She looks up, her eyes filled with a deep, complicated mix of guilt and concern for the brave boy. Suddenly, So-un's voice whispers right in her ear, asking what she is doing out here all by herself. She lets out a startled, high-pitched shriek, her face turning bright red. She spins around in a panic, stammering in embarrassment as she finds So-un standing right behind her with a relaxed smile. Moran clutches her hands tightly, her heart beating wildly as she struggles to regain her composure. Blushing furiously, she scolds him for being incredibly reckless and risking his life in such a dangerous duel. So-un merely chuckles, watching the purple petals fall around them as he asks what she means by reckless. Moran looks him straight in the eye, her soft pink gaze demanding to know why he was willing to go so far for their sake. The two stand together under the blooming wisteria, a quiet, peaceful moment between the two former rivals. She recalls the strategist words, wondering why anyone would risk their life for something others considered so incredibly trivial. We flash back to the quiet garden of the Iron Sword sect, where Moran is crying, asking So-un if he expected their sect to just quietly accept the public humiliation. So-un quickly raises his hands, gently reassuring her that he did not mean to insult her or dismiss her feelings. Moran looks down in deep sorrow, the massive weight of her family's corrupt actions pressing heavily on her shoulders. She remains silent, her tears reflecting her internal struggle as she deals with the harsh reality. A gentle breeze blows through the garden, sending a shower of purple wisteria petals falling around them. So-un offers her a sincere formal bow, offering his genuine apologies for the chaotic scene and any pain he caused. Moran wipes her eyes, admitting that a simple apology is not enough to make up for how much her family hurt his father, but she appreciates his sincerity and tells him to raise his head. She looks at him gently as he straightens up, the tension between them slowly fading away. She notes that, while the apology does not come from the actual culprits, she will gladly accept it, knowing her grandfather would never humble himself to apologize. Moran promises to do everything in her power to change her grandfather's mind, but So-un gently interrupts her, saying there is absolutely no need for that. With a warm, reassuring smile, So-un asks if it is not time for them to finally break this long, painful chain of misfortune between their families. Moran's eyes stretch wide in surprise, deeply touched by his maturity and willingness to move forward. So-un suggests that if she truly wants to make amends, she should focus on changing the Iron Sword sect from within so they are no longer corrupt. He tosses her a small white pouch as a parting gift, noting that while their sects have many differences, they are not completely alien. With a bright smile, So-un points out that in the end, both of their groups are just branches growing from the exact same tree of the Murim alliance. Moran gasps softly, completely captivated by his profound and mature perspective. She clutches the pouch tightly to her chest, her heart filled with a newfound respect for the young disciple. She realizes that while her own brother and grandfather are too stubborn to ever apologize, So-un's wisdom has opened a completely new path for them. She watches in silence as So-un calmly turns around and begins walking away. Suddenly, Moran lets out a loud, comical sniffle, rubbing her eyes as she starts crying again. So-un comically panics, waving his hands and telling her that tears really do not suit a powerful warrior like her. To stop his panic, Moran quickly presents a small, elegant black box, begging him to accept it as a representation of her genuine feelings. So-un takes the box with a comically bewildered face, wondering if it is his birthday. Moran explains that she hopes this gift will help build a better relationship between their sects in the future. So-un carefully lifts the lid, his jaw dropping in complete shock as he sees what is hidden inside. Resting on the velvet cushion is a glowing, deep purple orb. It is the legendary Steel Protection Pill, an incredibly rare spiritual elixir reserved only for the direct descendants of the Iron Sword sect. With a beautiful, radiant smile, Moran hopes that the next time they meet, they will be able to greet each other with genuine smiles. So-un smiles back warmly, bowing his hands in a respectful gesture and promising that he hopes for the exact same thing. We cut to a few days later, where the bright sun shines over the main courtyard of the Zylos sect. The leader and a crowd of excited junior disciples sprint across the yard, comically throwing themselves at So-un to welcome him home. The kids completely overwhelm him, excitedly asking if the rumors about his victory are true and begging to see the legendary nine-fold sword. Yuen-ho comically tackles him from behind, aggressively demanding to inspect the legendary sword right now. So-un looks at him with an amused grin as Yuen-ho stands up, looking incredibly serious. With a chibi smirk, So-un teases the boy, asking if he is begging for a piggyback ride, but Yuen-ho looks down, quietly admitting that he used to deeply regret joining their sect. Yuen-ho explains that whenever outsiders mocked the Tail sect for having a weak sword technique, he never knew how to defend his home. But seeing So-un's magnificent victory changed everything. He is now incredibly proud to call himself a disciple of the Tail sect. Gripping his practice sword tightly, Yuen-ho vows to train as hard as possible to completely master their family techniques. With a fiery determination in his eyes, he promises to become a legendary warrior just like senior brother Jin. Taesun, Saryeon, and the sect leader watch the heartwarming interaction from the pavilion with incredibly proud smiles. Deeply moved by the boy loyalty, untouches his chest, promising to hold him to that vow. He offers a warm, reassuring smile, patting his junior on the shoulder to encourage his training. The sect leader wipes a comical tear, admitting he could not sleep a wink from excitement. He praises them all for their incredible hard work. The hall masters gather around, agreeing that the victory was a massive achievement for their entire group. The leader reflects on the 150 years of humiliation they endured under the Iron Sword sect, praising So-un for accomplishing what the adults never could. So-un playfully carries one of the tiny disciples on his shoulders, thoroughly enjoying the happy, festive moment. Tae-san stands with Saryeon, admitting he feels incredibly grateful to his son, but also deeply ashamed of his own past weakness. The crying sect leader dramatically suggests they should throw a massive, lavish feast to celebrate, but Tae-san immediately shoots down the idea. With veins popping on his forehead, Tae-san comically screams that a single feast will completely ruin their side dish budget for the next 6 months. Saryeon argues back, pointing out that So-un just saved the entire sect honor, so a celebration is fully deserved. But Tae-san insists that honor will not fill their empty stomachs. To settle the argument, the generous sect leader pulls out a heavy pouch, offering to fund the party with his own personal savings. The other hall masters quickly join in, happily tossing their own coin pouches onto the table to help fund the celebration. So-un walks up behind his father, carrying a massive sack of gold coins he earned from selling his tiger pelts. He taps his father on the shoulder, presenting his fortune and teasingly asking if they have enough budget for a feast now. Tae-san spins around, his face twisting in comically dramatic shock as he looks at the massive pile of gold. He stammers in disbelief, completely stunned by his son's wealth. So-un casually cups his ear, playfully pretending that his hearing has been failing lately so he could not quite catch the complaints about his spending. In the background, a young disciple celebrates excitedly, shouting that with this new budget they can finally afford meat side dishes for every single meal. So-un deadpans, noting that he figured this would be the main priority for the kids. So-un rests his head on his arms with a warm, gentle smile. He is genuinely relieved to see that the cheerful, lively atmosphere has finally returned to the sect. He reflects on the rare iron-hard pills they received. Out of the 3 precious medicines they got from the strategist, 2 were distributed. 1 pill went to him, and another to Saryeon. The final remaining pill has been safely locked away as a future prize to motivate whichever disciple shows the greatest improvement. The narration shifts to Gai Kyeol, young wealthy father Gai Yan Seok. So-un notes that the old merchant is absolutely comically insane. Tae-san sits at his desk, furiously clacking away on a wooden abacus. He grumbles that their sect leader must have completely lost his mind. So-un watches in amusement as his father rants about the terrible deal, complaining that trading 3 profitable guest houses for a single spiritual pill is a massive financial disaster. In a flashback, the wealthy merchant is shown eagerly offering 3 guest houses in exchange for the pill. He reveals that while everyone else fought, his son Kyeol Young just drank wine and did nothing. Tae-san firmly states that the pride of their sect, which they defended with their very lives, should never be sold off so cheaply to corrupt merchants. Tae-san continues to complain to his son, though he admits the deal has motivated the junior disciples to train harder than ever. He comically yells that those 3 guest houses could have funded 5 pills every year. So-un smirks with a leaf in his mouth, knowing that despite his father loud grumbling about the money, deep down he is incredibly proud that the sect stood its ground. He announces that he is heading out. Tae-san asks him where he is going now. So-un playfully fires back that he is tired of his father's endless lectures about their budget, so he is going to find some easy cash. His father comically screams after him, asking how a brat plans to make money and warning him not to underestimate his father's financial wisdom. So-un ignores the comical yelling, confidently stepping out of the building. With a very sharp, confident grin, So-un promises himself that he is going to find exactly where the big money is hidden. Tae-san asks him where he is going now. So-un playfully fires back that he is tired of his father's endless lectures about their budget, so he is going to find some easy cash. His father comically screams after him, asking how a brat plans to make money and warning him not to underestimate his father's financial wisdom. So, ignores the comical yelling, confidently stepping out of the building. With a very sharp, confident grin, So promises himself that he is going to find exactly where the big money is hidden. So casually cups his ear, playfully pretending that his hearing has been failing lately so he could not quite catch the complaints about his spending. In the background, a young disciple celebrates excitedly, shouting that with this new budget they can finally afford meat side dishes for every single meal. So deadpans, noting that he figured this would be the main priority for the kids. So rests his head on his arms with a warm, gentle smile. He is genuinely relieved to see that the cheerful, lively atmosphere has finally returned to the sect. He reflects on the rare iron heart pills they received. Out of the 3 precious medicines they got from the strategist, 2 were distributed. 1 pill went to him, and another to Serion. The final remaining pill has been safely locked away as a future prize to motivate whichever disciple shows the greatest improvement. The narration shifts to Gai Kiol, young wealthy father Gai Yan Seok. So-un notes that the old merchant is absolutely comically insane. Tai-san sits at his desk, furiously clacking away on a wooden abacus. He grumbles that their sect leader must have completely lost his mind. So-un watches in amusement as his father rants about the terrible deal, complaining that trading 3 profitable guest houses for a single spiritual pill is a massive financial disaster. In a flashback, the wealthy merchant is shown eagerly offering 3 guest houses in exchange for the pill. He reveals that while everyone else fought, his son Kiol Young just drank wine and did nothing. Tai-san firmly states that the pride of their sect, which they defended with their very lives, should never be sold off so cheaply to corrupt merchants. Tai-san continues to complain to his son, though he admits the deal has motivated the junior disciples to train harder than ever. He comically yells that those 3 guest houses could have funded 5 pills every year. So smirks with a leaf in his mouth, knowing that despite his father loud grumbling about the money, deep down he is incredibly proud that the sect stood its ground. He announces that he is heading out. Tai-san asks him where he is going now. So-un playfully fires back that he is tired of his father's endless lectures about their budget, so he is going to find some easy cash. His father comically screams after him, asking how a brat plans to make money and warning him not to underestimate his father's financial wisdom. So ignores the comical yelling, confidently stepping out of the building. With a very sharp, confident grin, So promises himself that he is going to find exactly where the big money is hidden. We open on a quiet, scenic view of Wanga village as the afternoon sun begins to set over the bustling marketplace. A traveler in a traditional straw hat looks up in absolute awe, thoroughly impressed by the sheer size of the village. He stands before the grand, imposing gate of Wanga Manor, famously known as the home of one of the top 3 wealthiest merchant families in the entire world. The local villagers gossip about the mysterious daughter of the Wang family, noting that despite the endless rumors of her incredible beauty, absolutely no one has ever seen her face in person. We see a brief glimpse of a girl in elegant purple robes walking quietly through the estate private courtyard. A dark silhouette stands silently before a set of closed sliding doors, preparing to enter. A hand slowly pushes open the heavy sliding door with a soft creak. Lord Wang Jiam-san, the powerful master of Wanga Manor, steps into the room, warmly announcing to his daughter that her father has finally returned home. Inside, a bowl of fresh fruit on the table is completely covered in a thick layer of white frost, the air in the room freezing cold. A soft, painful coughing sound echoes through the chilly chamber, hinting at a severe hidden illness. The spacious room is surrounded by blocks of ice to keep the temperature freezing. Wang Soso sits quietly in the center, greeting her father with a weak voice. Soso, the only daughter of the wealthy merchant, looks up with a gentle but pale smile, welcoming her father back from his long journey. Jiam-san sits beside her, warmly asking how her day went. Soso happily shows him her new embroidery, explaining she spent the afternoon working on a special design. She proudly displays the delicate green wisteria design, hoping to use it to sew a beautiful new robe for her father. Her father tries to stay positive, promising it will be a wonderful set of clothes. He recalls how they have been forced to fill her entire room with ice blocks just to keep her alive. A flashback shows the local doctor shaking his head in defeat, warning the desperate father that the ice only temporarily delays her body's fatal rising temperature. The doctor sadly explains that So-So rare congenital condition is completely incurable, and she will likely not survive past her 20th birthday. Back in the present, So-So lets out another painful cough, her body clearly burning up despite the freezing temperature of the room. The loving father tries to hide his tears, asking his daughter what she wants for her upcoming birthday. So-So smiles, claiming he has already given her everything she could ever want. But after a brief pause, she quietly admits that there is one last thing she absolutely wants to experience. Since her room windows are sealed shut to preserve the cold, So-So admits she has always been incredibly curious about what the outside world actually looks like. San is left completely heartbroken, closing his eyes in silent pain as he realizes how much his daughter has truly suffered. He reveals that he has actually been preparing a very special enclosed carriage designed specifically for her needs. He explains that they are designing a complex mechanism to keep the inside of the carriage freezing cold so she can travel safely. So-So is absolutely thrilled, throwing her arms around her father in a warm, joyful hug. She happily thanks her father, calling his surprise the absolute best birthday gift she could have ever asked for. The father tightly holds his daughter close, swearing to himself that he would gladly spend his entire massive fortune if it meant finding a cure for her. As night falls, the majestic Manga manor is beautifully illuminated under the starry sky. But the peaceful night is shattered as San returns to So-So room, finding the chamber completely empty with a broken bowl and blood on the floor. So-So has been kidnapped. San clutches her left-behind embroidery, his hands trembling in a mix of terror and absolute fury. He unleashes a powerful echoing scream of pure rage, demanding to know who dared to harm his daughter. He summons his entire personal guard, commanding them to assemble in the main courtyard immediately. Standing before his forces, San orders them to hunt down the kidnappers and drag them before him. He promises a massive life-changing reward to whoever safely rescues So-So. A posted notice with So-So face is quickly distributed across the city, promising a vast fortune to absolutely anyone who can find her. Wearing a traveler's straw hat, stands in front of the crowd quietly reading the notice. With a sharp, confident smirk, realizes that his grand plan to secure a wealthy sponsor has officially begun. He leaps swiftly across the tiled rooftops under the night sky, moving like a shadow as he tracks down the kidnapper's location. Using his perfect memory of past events, navigates through the forest with incredible speed and agility. He is completely determined to reach the target before the villains can do any harm, knowing this is his best chance to save the girl. We flash back to conversation about sponsorships, where he noted that relying on Guy Greedy Family was more of a corrupt transaction than a true partnership. He explains that such transactions always end the moment the other party gets what they want, leaving the sect incredibly vulnerable. What the Taeil sect truly needs is a massive, loyal sponsor whose support is built on genuine gratitude and respect. They need a wealthy family large enough to completely replace Guy Merchant Group and resolve their chronic financial deficit once and for all. With a very sharp, devious smirk, decides that he will act as the prince on a white horse who rescues the wealthy merchant daughter to secure their alliance. And now, standing inside the hidden cabin, he has successfully located his target. He recalls the criminal reports from his past life, narrowing down the records to a specific incident involving a young girl around Hefei. Most of the files were simple burglaries, but he vividly remembers one tragic report about an unidentified girl body being discovered. By matching the old logs, unsuccessfully locates the hidden cabin in the woods where the victim was buried in his previous life. He lands quietly on the wooden roof, preparing to slide inside and completely ambush the kidnappers. As he peeks inside, he spots several masked assassins standing over the unconscious So-So. He is immensely relieved to find he arrived just in time. But suddenly the guards panic as So-So body begins to heat up rapidly, her face turning flushed as her fever spikes completely out of control. Jaw drops in comical confusion. He realizes there was absolutely no mention of her having a deadly fever in the official alliance reports. The kidnapper draws his sword, stating that their master ordered them to destroy all evidence and kill the girl if the plan faced any complications. He prepares to execute the helpless girl, but has absolutely no intention of letting them touch his future sponsor. Crashes violently through the wooden window, catching the assassins completely off guard. With a series of swift lightning-fast slashes, So-un easily cuts down the masked guards before they can even draw their weapons. So-so slowly opens her eyes, her vision blurry as she spots the mysterious warrior standing over her. She looks up dazed, wondering who this strange savior could possibly be. So-un cuts her ropes, noticing that her skin is burning hot to the touch. He kneels beside her, placing his hand on her forehead and realizing her life-threatening fever is far too severe to be a simple cold. He offers a warm, reassuring smile, asking if she is finally awake. So-so weakly asks who he is. So-un confidently introduces himself as Jin, So-un of the Taeil sect. He spins a classic hero story, claiming he was just taking a casual night stroll when he heard suspicious noises coming from the cabin and decided to investigate. He boasts about his heroic rescue, proudly calling himself her personal savior. So-so weakly thanks him for saving her life, promising that her father will reward him handsomely once she returns safely. So-un reaches down to lift her, offering to take her to the nearest physician immediately, but she frantically begs him to stop. She explains that unless she is surrounded by freezing air, her body temperature will continue to rise until all her acupoints burn up, making movement absolutely fatal. So-un's expression turns deeply serious. He realizes this is not a normal illness and desperately racks his brain for a solution. He closes his eyes, diving deep into his photographic memory to search for any matching medical records. He focuses his mind, desperately searching through his mental database for any hidden cure. He navigates through the massive library of medical texts he memorized during his past life. He connects the symptoms of her fever to search for any legendary physician notes on the solar constitution. There must be a record of a cure hidden somewhere within the Murim Alliance, vast secret medical archives. He dives deeper into his memories, tracing the ancient scrolls. Suddenly, he finds a blue glowing manual called the Compendium of 10,000 Bottles, written by a legendary physician. If his memory is correct, this book contains the exact treatment he needs to save her. He recalls a specific text detailing a rare condition that causes high fevers, boiling fire chi, and immense physical pain. The mental scroll identifies the congenital illness as the solar constitution, a fatal condition where the body internal heat can literally burn up the acupoints. So-un looks down at her in shock, realizing that according to the medical texts, there is absolutely no known cure for her condition. So-so lies helpless on the floor, her life slipping away as the fatal fever continues to rage out of control. Wait, what? A solar constitution? Turns out this girl's life-threatening fever is not actually an illness, but a super rare bodily constitution. And because of that, things get extremely complicated. Looking at her passed out and burning up like this, it is crystal clear she is at her absolute limit. The worst part is that there is actually no known treatment for this condition. Once it flares up, the victim is pretty much doomed. For a woman to be born with this specific constitution is incredibly rare. So-un cannot help but stress over how terrible her timing is. In his previous life, this girl went missing, and her wealthy father spent his entire massive fortune searching everywhere for her. He hired countless search parties to comb through every single corner of Hefei and Chao Lake. But in the end, they could not even find her body. The family was left completely devastated by the tragic loss. The kidnappers probably did not realize she had such a fatal condition. Once she started dying, she lost all value as a hostage, so they likely disposed of her. So-un realizes that if the solar constitution is the root cause of her fever, he might have to try a highly risky method to save her. She slowly opens her eyes, weakly asking what he is talking about. She is barely conscious at this point. He looks down at her with a serious expression. It is a huge gamble, but it is her one and only shot at surviving the night. He leans in close and confidently tells her that he might actually know a way to completely alter her constitution. The two sit together in the quiet, dimly lit cabin as the realization sinks in. She weakly reaches out her trembling hand, desperately begging him to tell her the secret. With tears in her eyes and a heavily flushed face, she promises to do absolutely anything if he can just save her life. So-un immediately panics and waves his hands around. He tells her that changing a constitution is a massive deal, asking what she would do if he turned out to be a total scammer. But she looks right back at him with pure determination, stating she can easily tell the difference between someone trying to help and someone trying to hurt her. Seeing her absolute resolve, he finally lets out a sigh and agrees to help her out. He recalls an ancient record about the bare-handed Jade Maiden, a supreme master who was born with the opposite lunar constitution. While that constitution allowed her to reach the peak of ice arts, it also left her completely unable to conceive. She eventually begged a legendary physician to find a solution, and he discovered a secret way to swap extreme yang and yin constitutions. So, Un reasons that since So-So has the opposite solar constitution, reversing the legendary physician treatment method should work. However, the treatment requires taking a highly toxic pill every day alongside practicing a specific sect, Tai mental cultivation method. But she does not care about the risks or the restrictions at all. She has absolutely no interest in becoming a powerful martial artist anyway. All she wants is a simple and peaceful life. She just wants to watch the flowers bloom, spend time with her family, and eventually have children of her own. She wants to experience the ordinary things in life that absolutely everyone else takes for granted. Even though she was born into immense wealth, her fragile body kept her locked away from the rest of the world. With her mind made up, So-Un prepares to start, but suddenly his sharp ears detect multiple footsteps approaching the cabin. Before she can even react to the noise, So-Un quickly taps a pressure point on the back of her neck to put her to sleep. He catches her as she falls unconscious, quietly apologizing for the sudden move. He turns around and firmly grips his sword hilt, his eyes narrowing as he prepares for a fight. Outside, the leader of the kidnappers is plotting his next move, knowing that leaving any evidence behind would put them in a terrible position. Realizing their carrier pigeon did not return, the leader senses that something unexpected has happened and orders his men to move in. The masked assassins quickly surround the dark cabin, completely ready to secure the hostage by force. The leader strictly warns them to keep their identities hidden and absolutely avoid using their signature sword moves. But before they can even break in, So-Un casually steps out of the cabin with a drawn blade, mocking them for swarming in like cowards. The assassins gasp in shock, demanding to know who he is. He simply smiles, calling himself the guy who came to ruin their parade. The leader realizes they cannot let any witnesses escape, drawing his sword and demanding to know who sent him. So, Un just scoffs, revealing that he already knows exactly who they are. Secret lackeys belonging to the Namgung clan Kangcheong merchant group. The leader's eyes stretch wide in absolute shock, his mind racing as he wonders how a random kid knows their deepest secret. So, Un continues to lay it all out, explaining how their group resorted to kidnapping because they could not find a legitimate way to beat the Wanga manor in business. He mockingly tests at their pathetic methods, calling out their master for crossing the line. The leader realizes they must silence him immediately. With a furious roar, the leader commands his men to unleash the sword of Namgung. They lunge forward in unison, flawlessly executing their Kangcheong boundless sword technique. So, Un merely smiles, thoroughly amused that they are using a technique he already knows inside out. He easily steps into the center of their formation, deflecting their joint strikes with a loud metallic ring. With a single lightning-fast counter, he slices clean through one of the assassin defenses. The wounded man collapses to the ground, cursing So-Un for being a cowardly bastard. So-Un laughs at the irony, asking how a group of guys ganging up on one person can talk about cowardice. He delivers another swift strike, blood spraying as he cuts down another foe. Furious, the captain steps up to unleash the second form of the Kangcheong boundless sword technique. So-Un calmly reads the movement, calling out the exact thrust and upward slash before the captain can even complete it. He easily parries the strike and goads the captain, telling him he should have stepped a half step closer if he actually wanted to land a hit. The captain is driven back in pure shock, completely unable to comprehend how his best moves are being predicted so effortlessly. Sweat drips down the captain's face as his mind is filled with absolute denial. He cannot believe a complete nobody is effortlessly overpowering his clan signature technique. So-Un notes that the captain moves are decent, but tells him he had better stay on edge for what is coming next. Desperate to win, the captain prepares to unleash his ultimate killing move. He charges forward with absolutely everything he has, his eyes wide with a manic determination. But So-Un's eyes glow with a sharp blue light, declaring that his counter is on a level they could never hope to predict. In an instant, a storm of brilliant slashes cuts through the darkness. The captain is caught right in the center of the vortex, spitting blood as the brutal strikes connect. His sword is knocked clean out of his hand, blood spraying across the grass as he is thoroughly defeated. So-un lands gracefully, casually sheathing his sword as the dust begins to settle. The remaining assassins lie motionless on the ground, leaving the captain to groan in pure disbelief. Bleeding heavily, the defeated leader weakly asks how he managed to pull off such an incredible feat. He asks how So-un could possibly devastate their clan elite technique. So-un walks over and steps on the captain's chest, asking why he is so surprised. He mocks the captain for thinking their sword style was invincible. He looks back, explaining that the captain did not even know of the existence of the sword-breaking formula designed specifically to counter their style. With the threat completely taken care of, So-un turns his attention back to the cabin. He slides the wooden door open, stepping back inside to check on So-so. He places his hand on her forehead, preparing to begin the highly delicate treatment process. He looks down at her with a gentle expression, quietly announcing that they will begin the treatment now. The dark cabin remains peaceful under the starry night sky as the healing begins. By the next morning, So-so fever has finally broken, the warm sunlight shining through the window. She nervously fidgets with her clothes, blushing as she prepares to ask him a very personal question. With a sparkling, adorable background, she softly asks if she can call him her Oroboni, leaving him completely speechless.